You practice immortality. I cultivate the land. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176, The Mystical Peach. This time, he only sold more than 100 spiritual fireflies in his hand and exchanged them for more than 400 spiritual stones. There were not many places where he spent spiritual stones. He bought some spiritual fruits, spiritual rice, monster meat, and a few second-hand flying swords used as nutrients for the sword-raising gourd. In addition, he bought several auxiliary materials for the early stage of the cultivation potion of Texuhua Langpian. He walked around Jianmen Town. Only a few stalls had spiritual seeds for sale, and they were all the types that Lu Xuan had already known. After asking, the price was much more expensive than exchanging from the sect. As for those spiritual seeds that the sect currently did not have, or were completely unknown, he was not lucky this time and did not find them. Maybe the only disadvantage of entering the sect is that you can't pick up leeks as easily as in Linyang Market. After all, most disciples of the sect are knowledgeable, and they may know the spiritual seeds that ordinary cultivators don't know. Of course, although the probability is smaller, once it appears, it means good things, such as the 4th grade 100 strange wood. Lu Xuan sighed and returned to the house. After learning that spiritual plants can be improved, he planned to try to improve the spiritual firefly grass himself. Although the spiritual firefly grass is only a non-grade spiritual plant, he has kept the habit of planting it because it can improve Lu Xuan's cultivation. As his cultivation becomes deeper and deeper, the other rewards from the spiritual firefly grass are becoming more and more useless, so Lu Xuan plans to do an experiment to see if he can improve the variety. There are still 300 spiritual seeds of the spiritual firefly grass that he condensed last time. He took out 100 and evenly divided them into 2 parts. These 100 seeds act on the spiritual seed period by changing the storage conditions of the spiritual seeds, inducing changes in the spiritual seeds, and thus screening out benign heterogeneous spiritual firefly grass. The remaining 200 plants will be used after planting to stimulate the plants during the growth stage and in a long-term special environment to see if they can successfully mutate the spiritual firefly grass. Since there are still dozens of spiritual firefly grass plants that have not yet fully matured in the last batch of spiritual fireflies planted, this part of the spiritual seeds must be slow first, and the experiment will only begin after all the spiritual fireflies are fully mature. Of the 100 spiritual seeds, 50 were placed in the cold spring water in the cave, and the other 50 were placed in a white jade box and placed in the alchemy furnace, where they were gently baked with the weakest fire. Changing the 5-element environment is the most common way to induce changes in spiritual seeds. Lu Xuan is currently not able to provide other spiritual environments with special properties, spiritual soil, and various complex cultivation conditions. Although the spiritual energy in this cave in the Xianjian sect is pure and rich, it is neutral and peaceful in nature, without any special features. As for the spiritual soil, it is also a common type, suitable for the growth of most spiritual plants, especially low-grade spiritual plants. After starting to induce the spiritual firefly grass spiritual seeds, Lu Xuan no longer paid attention. In the next few days, he was still busy. Due to the excellent inspection results and fair prices, his reputation was soon known to the cultivators in other waters of Qianlan Lake. They contacted Lu Xuan through Huang Yuan and asked him to take blood tests on his dragons and pythons. Lu Xuan was naturally happy to get the dragon's blood and earn spiritual stones. Finally, I'm done. I didn't expect that there are so many dragons, giant pythons and other monsters in Qianlan Lake. Lu Xuan shook his aching arm and said to Huang Yuan with half surprise and half emotion. The dragons, giant pythons and other monsters he had drawn blood from these days, even if there are not 1,000, are probably not much. Even if they are all 1st grade and 2nd grade, such a large number can also show the depth of the Xianjian sect. Thank you for your hard work during this period, junior brother Lu. You have checked almost all the dragons and giant pythons in the entire Qianlan Lake. All the brothers will remember this friendship, Huang Yuan said with a smile. In the past few days, he was only responsible for leading the way and introducing people, and he didn't get any rewards, but he also gained a lot invisibly. He solved the problem of hidden scalefish in Qianlong Lake, and left a good impression in the eyes of many fellow disciples. I have to thank senior brother Huang for helping to introduce me. Senior brother, why don't you go to my small courtyard and have a few drinks? There are still spiritual wine and spiritual fruits at home. Lu Xuan invited Huang Yuan. Huang Yuan was naturally happy to further deepen the friendship between him and Lu Xuan, and quickly agreed. The two drank and talked for a long time. After Huang Yuan left, Lu Xuan closed the gate, opened the formation, and staggered into the house with a little tipsiness. I was wondering why I felt a little heavy when I walked. It turned out that it was the pressure of the spirit stones. A mountain of spirit stones appeared on the ground, with spiritual light surging and dazzling. This time, due to the information gap, he gained a lot from the problem of the hidden scalefish in Qianlong Lake. There were more than 2,000 spirit stones alone, making his wealth unprecedentedly strong now, with a total of more than 4,000 spirit stones on him. In addition, there were nearly 1,000 dragons and giant pythons. In the end, he had to keep a large capacity container in his storage bag to hold the blood of the same species of dragons and giant pythons. In this way, he avoided the embarrassing situation of having no place to put the blood after drawing blood. With so much blood, if the materials are enough, I can make a potion hot spring for cultivation. Lu Xuan thought a little extravagantly. Suddenly getting rich, his mentality is naturally different. His mind is now full of shopping. He did what he thought. The next day, after cultivating the spiritual plants in the spiritual field, he came to the Synod Hall. Junior brother Lu, I haven't seen you for a while. The old farmer monk who had met Lu Xuan several times greeted him warmly when he saw him. He immediately offered spiritual tea and spiritual fruit, and there was a bit of flattery in his words and deeds. It was no wonder that he acted like this. Although Lu Xuan's cultivation was average, in his eyes, he had a bright future. He had a terrifying talent in the spiritual plant. In the key training realm, he had already tried to plant several third-grade spiritual plants. Although cultivating spiritual plants is a minor path, once it is achieved to the extreme, it is not much different from other things such as alchemy and refining. With Lu Xuan's talent in the spiritual plant, he might become his immediate superior many years later. What's more, Lu Xuan has been favored by the head of Synod Hall, who personally gave him 2 swordgrass spiritual seeds, with a tendency to cultivate him into the core spiritual plant master circle of Xianjian sect. Senior brother, you don't have to be so polite, Lu Xuan said with a smile. Of course, of course. By the way, junior brother Lu, how is the cultivation of the swordgrass spirit seed that the hall master gave you before? Is it growing smoothly? Everything is normal. The growth state may be better than the first swordgrass. Lu Xuan compared the difference between the swordgrass before and after, and said modestly, during those days, the hall master was always thinking about the 2 swordgrasses. The old farmer monk rubbed his hands, and his face wrinkled with laughter. Brother, I came here this time to exchange for a few spiritual plants, preferably with spiritual stones. As for the variety, spiritual fruits are mainly used, and the grade should not be lower than the 2nd grade. Lu Xuan went straight to the point. He now has the idea of large-scale cultivation of 2nd grade spiritual plants, among which he prefers spiritual fruit types. First, the spiritual fruit type usually produces a certain number of spiritual fruits, unlike most other spiritual plants, which are mainly single fruits and single plants, so that more light balls can be produced. Second, the cultivated spiritual fruits can better help him hold the thighs of Xuanshan Bailuan and its companions. As for the rank, it goes without saying that the 1st rank spiritual plants are basically useless to him. The spiritual seeds that can be exchanged for spiritual stones are no lower than the 2nd rank, and spiritual fruit type spiritual plants are given priority. The old farmer monk lowered his head and thought for a while, then flipped through a jade book. There are not many spiritual seeds that can be exchanged for spiritual stones. I remember there is 1 3rd rank spiritual fruit, but it seems that the cultivation conditions are a bit special. That's it, the 3rd rank fairy peach. The monk turned to a page in the jade book and said to Lu Xuan, A beautiful peach tree appeared in front of Lu Xuan. The peach leaves were pink, the trunk was pink and white, and there was a faint red mist around the tree. There were more than 10 red peaches looming, which was very charming. Chapter 177, Unruly Ling Teo. If you can't beat them, join them. Junior brother Lu, are you sure you want to choose this 3rd grade enchanting peach? The old farmer asked Lu Xuan. Brother, I wonder what secrets are hidden in this enchanting peach? Can you explain it to me? Lu Xuan asked in a deep voice. For some reason, I know a little about this 3rd grade immortal peach. It is said that in the growth stage, spiritual plants continuously release a special aura, which can stimulate the 7 emotions and 6 desires in the cultivator's heart, especially lust. This goes against the authentic practice of our famous sects. When practicing, cultivators need to abandon their inner desires and keep their minds clear and free from desires. Only in this way can they maintain a good state of practice. If the state of mind is affected, the progress of practice will be slowed down. In severe cases, it will even breed inner demons and make it easy for evil spirits to invade. For sect cultivators, practice is the right way, and spiritual plants are only auxiliary. Therefore, few cultivators are willing to plant this immortal peach. Only those demon cultivators with willful minds, especially those who are good at dual cultivation techniques, will grow more. I heard that there are several world famous brothels in the practice world, and immortal peaches are planted everywhere in them to help emotions. The old farmer cultivator leaned close to Lu Xuan's ear, covered his mouth, and whispered. After he finished speaking, a hint of hesitation flashed across his face. He carefully looked around, and came closer again. Junior brother Lu, you have just entered the sect not long ago, and there are some things in the sect that you are not clear enough about. There is an interesting story about this fairy peach. It is rumored that many years ago, there were 2 foundation building uncles in the sect, one male and one female. They were discussing things under a large forest of fairy peaches planted by one of them. As a result, under the aphrodisiac effect of the spiritual plants, they could not help but have some shady things. Oh. Lu Xuan's eyes lit up immediately. Regardless of strength or status, people are always curious about gossip, especially those about the superiors. When he heard the two keywords foundation building uncle and shady things, the genes deep in Lu Xuan's heart were naturally triggered. Brother, I have finished cultivating the spiritual plants this morning. I have plenty of time. You can tell me in detail about the affair. The 2 uncles were so hot-tempered that they used the sky as a blanket and the ground as a bed, and the prelude to the war began. When the battle was at its most intense, guess what? The Taoist partner of the male uncle rushed over, and in a rage, they directly tore each other's faces. But 2 fists were no match for 4 hands, and they were subdued by the 2 of them. Guess what happened? The Taoist partner of the foundation building uncle was killed by the 2 of them? Lu Xuan asked subconsciously. No, the uncle who was controlled could not help but join in the long-term influence of the aura of the enchanting peach, and it became a big melee. Hiss. Is this what they call join if you can't beat them? Lu Xuan couldn't help but take a breath of cold air and eased his mood. Brother, I have nothing to do this afternoon, so you can start the big melee again. After such a big melee, the sect directly sent the 3 uncles to the extremely remote and bitter cold secret realm. I don't know what is going on now. Only their deeds will be passed down in the sect forever. The old farmer monk concluded. This enchanting peach is something. After listening to the end, Lu Xuan couldn't help but sighed and sighed. But brother, I'm a person who usually practices barely, and my mind is more spent on planting spiritual plants, so this enchanting peach doesn't have a big impact on me. It's rare to encounter such an interesting spiritual plant, so I still want to try planting it. Okay, since you have made your choice, I won't say more. If the number of enchanting peaches is limited, the impact is not very big. Brother Lu, you just need to pay more attention. How much is the price of the enchanting peach spirit seed? Lu Xuan asked the old farmer monk. The immortal peach is a cyclical spiritual plant. During its life cycle, spiritual fruits can be picked repeatedly, so the price is slightly more expensive than other ordinary 3rd grade spiritual plants. Each spiritual seed requires 320 spiritual stones. Then please help me get 3 immortal peach spiritual seeds. Lu Xuan took out 960 spiritual stones from the storage bag. Although the consumption is huge, it comes from fellow disciples in Long Lake anyway, so I don't feel bad about spending it. When the old farmer monk went to get the immortal peach spiritual seeds, Xuan continued to flip through the jade book in his hand. There are not many third grade spiritual seeds or spiritual plant seedlings that can be purchased with spiritual stones on the jade book, and most of them are still out of stock. He roughly looked through it and didn't find the spiritual seeds he liked, so he picked up another jade book of second grade spiritual plants that can be purchased with spiritual stones. There are many more types of spiritual plants on this jade book. He found 4 spiritual fruits in stock. After weighing it again and again, he decided to choose one of the spiritual fruit type spiritual plants he had seen before, the fiery fruit. Previously, I received a task related to the fiery fruit in the General Affairs Hall, helping a round-faced female cultivator solve the growth problem of a mutated fiery fruit, so I have a certain understanding of it. 3 third grade enchanting peaches, plus some fiery fruits, that's about enough. The area of the cave's spiritual field is limited. Planting so many second grade and third grade spiritual plants, the spiritual power is just barely enough. After the cultivation breaks through to the foundation building, I have an independent mountain and abundant spiritual power, then I will consider planting more spiritual plants. Xuan said to himself. Brother Lu, this is the spiritual seed of the enchanting peach. You must collect it well and plant it as soon as possible to avoid losing vitality and affecting its growth. After a while, the old farmer cultivator came out with a white jade box. There was a talisman on the outside of the box. Based on Xuan's understanding of basic talismans, it seemed to be a rune of the purity type. He carefully opened the jade box, which contained 3 fist-sized peach pits. The peach pits had dense grooves and were light red. There were faint wisps of pink smoke flowing between the grooves, stirring the heartstrings of the cultivator. Thank you, senior brother. In addition, please tell me how many spiritual stones are needed for each of these flaming fruit spirit seeds. Second grade spiritual plant flaming fruit. 55 spiritual stones each. How many do you need, junior brother Lu? Give me 10. Xuan took out 550 spiritual stones and said with a smile. So many? Junior brother Lu really spared no effort in cultivating spiritual plants. With such a strong talent and so hard work in cultivating spiritual plants, no wonder the whole master values you. The old farmer cultivator couldn't help but be amazed. In his impression, Xuan had exchanged many second grade and third grade spiritual plants from the Sinner Hall, which were far beyond the level of comments cultivated by ordinary key training spiritual plant masters. He accepted the spiritual stones, sighed, and entered the inner hall of the Sinner Hall to get the spiritual seeds for Xuan. 10 fiery fruit spiritual seeds. Please have a look, junior brother Lu. The storage of the second grade fiery fruit spiritual seeds was naturally much simpler than that of the third grade mystic peach. Soon, the old farmer monk came out of the inner hall and handed Xuan 10 spiritual seeds that burned like blazing fire. Xuan bowed and thanked him and returned to the cave with the mystic peach and the fiery fruit spiritual seeds. Chapter 178, Ice and Fire, Grass Puppet Breakthrough. In the spiritual field, Xuan found an empty area and took out the white jade box containing the charming peach spirit seed. He carefully examined the 3 spirit seeds in the box. Unconsciously, the pink smoke in the gully of the spirit seeds became more and more dense. In Xuan's sight, the spirit seeds instantly became extremely charming. It suddenly became a peach-shaped asterisk, and soon became a peach-shaped asterisk, which made the bloody Xuan imagine. Bold. I can see at a glance that you are not a proper spirit seed. Xuan's spiritual power surged, and he cast a purification spell on himself. In an instant, his mind was clear and his thoughts were peaceful. The peach core spirit seed returned to its original appearance. It is indeed an improper spirit peach. Fortunately, I have a way to deal with it. Under the purification spell, I have no desires. Women will only affect the speed of my farming. Xuan performed the earth-inducing technique, and the inside of the spiritual soil changed quietly. 3 circular holes appeared, just in time to take the 3 charming peach spirit seeds into it. His mind was focused on a magical peach seed, and then a thought flashed through his mind. The magical peach is a third grade spiritual plant. It can bear fruit for the first time in about 3 years, and then bear fruit every 2 years until its life limit. The mature spiritual fruit contains rich spiritual power and is extremely delicious. It is very popular among cultivators and spiritual beasts. The spiritual fruit can be eaten directly and has a natural anti-aging effect. Long-term consumption can also increase the charm of the eater. It can also be used to refine certain special elixirs or brew spiritual wine. During the growth of the spiritual plant, it will release miasma that can arouse the inner desires of cultivators and monsters. After the miasma is collected in large quantities through special means, it can be refined into certain strange instruments. The road to cultivation is long, so enjoy life in time. Enjoy life in time. For me, planting spiritual plants is the greatest pleasure. Xuan recalled the thoughts in his mind and sighed. After entering the sect, he came into contact with more and more types of spiritual plants. In Linyang Market, due to the low grade of spiritual plants, most of them are disposable spiritual plants, and it is difficult to harvest them a second time after they mature. Now, there are annually inhui in the spiritual field. The longer they survive, the better. Of course, they will also be limited by their own vitality. In addition, with the newly planted periodic Mizan Tao, new spiritual fruits can be harvested every once in a while until the life limit of the spiritual plant. A third grade spiritual plant is equivalent to the foundation building realm. Naturally, it will not have infinite life. Only within the life cycle can spiritual fruits be picked repeatedly. But this is already quite good. After all, each spiritual fruit can harvest a light ball reward. Xuan sighed secretly. He came to the other end of the spiritual field and continued to perform the earth drawing technique, placing 10 flaming fruit spiritual seeds into the spiritual soil. His mind was focused on one of the spiritual seeds, and a thought flashed through his mind. Flame fruit, a second grade spiritual plant. Mature spiritual fruit contains rich fire spiritual power. When eaten, it will produce a slight explosion in the mouth. The spiritual power can warm the limbs and bones, and can also be used as a refining material for some spiritual wines and brews. When cultivating, according to the growth progress, it is necessary to perform fire-based spells below the second grade, to stimulate the spiritual plant, and accelerate its growth. The fire-type spiritual fruit, the fiery fruit, plus the ice-type spiritual fruit, the ice divine fruit, both types of spiritual fruits, are given to the high-grade spiritual beasts in the sect at the same time, so that they can feel the shock brought by the ice and fire double world. Xuan looked at the fiery fruit in the spiritual seed state, and the pale white ice divine fruit with branches and leaves not far away, and thought proudly. In this way, the spiritual plants in the cave now include the non-grade spiritual firefly grass, the second-grade streamer wood, yinhui, fiery fruit, ice divine fruit, sword grass, the third-grade jiaoteng, jade scale fruit, sword cultivation gourd, and the charming immortal peach, and finally the only fourth-grade zuanchangteng. In addition to the third-grade ghost-faced stone mushroom, thorn bone, poisonous shuttlewood, and the 4th grade 100 strange wood in the small courtyard of Jianmen Town. Unknowingly, Xuan has planted a variety of high-grade rare and precious spiritual plants, and the growth in the spiritual plant field is amazing. Xuan sighed, calmed his mind, and patrolled the spiritual field to check the growth status of each spiritual plant. In the firefly grass area, the remaining 77 firefly grasses gradually entered a fully mature state. Xuan picked all of them and got 10 firefly grasses of perfect quality. Most of the others were of superior quality, and a few were of good quality. He picked up 77 white light balls from one end to another. Although the rewards in the light balls were not rich, the harvest itself was a pleasure for him, so he never tired of it. The absorbed light balls brought Xuan more than 10 years of cultivation rewards. After absorbing them one by one, he felt that the spiritual power in his body was unprecedentedly full, and his danshan had a faint sense of expansion that was about to be filled. It's almost time. Plant another batch of firefly grass, harvest a wave of cultivation, and then you can impact the foundation building realm. Feeling the spiritual power in his body, Xuan had a sense of unreality. More than 3 years ago, he was just a small cultivator of the second level of key training, with ordinary qualifications and ordinary background. Every day he thought about how to survive, and how to earn a little broken spirit. But now, the foundation building realm, that was high above and untouchable in the past seems not so far away. Therefore, he is more determined to plant spiritual plants. Among the remaining light balls, the rewards were mainly first grade medicinal elixirs and talismans, with a few earth-inducing and wood-growing experience packs, which were better than nothing. The rewards from the 10 perfect quality firefly grasses were not bad, including 3 second grade sword energy talismans, 4 drops of first grade treasure grass spirit essence liquid, and 3 experience packs of the essence refining pill recipe. Xuan put more than 70 mature firefly grasses into a long white jade box, collected various rewards, and summoned the grass puppet in front of him. Here, I'll give you something delicious. He took out a drop of grass spirit essence liquid and stuffed it into the tumor formed by the grey grass on the huge head of the grass puppet. A crack appeared in the grey grass tumor, which absorbed the grass spirit essence liquid containing rich plant spirit energy. Suddenly, the grey grass tumor quickly turned green and spread from the top of the head all the way down to the 2 long and thin legs like chopsticks. Is it going to break through, or what? Xuan suddenly realized that something was wrong with the grass puppet in front of him. The grey grass that made up its body suddenly scattered and fluttered in disorder. The huge tumor formed by the grey grass expanded and contracted, and some unknown changes occurred inside. Then, the green color on its body instantly dissipated, and new grey grass stretched out from its body and drilled into the grey grass tumor like a worm. Xuan sensed that countless grey grasses reorganized into the body of the grass puppet through the tumor. The new body is still big head and small body, and the limbs are particularly eye-catching, but the overall appearance has become much tighter and tighter, and the huge tumor on the head seems to be a little bigger. Xuan's mind is focused on it and found that the grass puppet's intelligence has also improved. Before, it only had some simple behavior patterns, but now it has a low-level intelligence, equivalent to a 2 or 3-year-old baby. Deep in its heart, it seems to have absolute trust and dependence on Xuan. The 4 words guarding the spiritual field appear from time to time in its only intelligence. Xuan experimented and found that it could release and control several times more grey grass than before, and the toughness of the grey grass was much stronger. When it was condensed together, it was comparable to some first grade magic tools. However, the speed of the display was still not fast or slow, and it was always in its own rhythm. This second-hand grass puppet I bought at the casual cultivator market a long time ago has been with me for the longest time. I fed it with the first grade treasure, the grass spirit essence liquid, and now it has finally broken through. Xuan looked at the stupid grass puppet in front of him and couldn't help sighing in his heart. It still looks better with a little green. He smiled slightly, took out a drop of grass spirit essence liquid, and stuffed it into the huge grass tumor that was a few times larger. Chapter 179, Substitute Evil Infant. There's a ball of light. Just as the straw puppet turned and left, Xuan saw a fist-sized ball of white light floating behind him. With 7 parts of expectation and 3 parts of doubt, he asked the straw puppet to stop and gently touch the white ball of light floating in the air. An evil baby cry came from the light ball, like crying and complaining, and then it turned into countless light points and poured into Xuan's body. A thought flashed through his mind. A 7 or 8 inch straw doll appeared in Xuan's palm. The straw doll was grey-black and woven from countless fine hay. Holding it in the hand, had a strange feeling of real skin. The doll's head was a mess of grey-black hay, and the outline of the facial features could be vaguely seen on the wrinkled face. Xuan's mind was focused on the straw doll and he immediately understood the detailed information about it. Substitute evil infant, a 3rd grade evil object, carried with you, dripped with essence and blood, and infiltrated into the spiritual consciousness. When the cultivator suffered a fatal blow, it was automatically triggered and dissipated by itself after being triggered. A 3rd grade evil object can block a fatal blow for a cultivator? Xuan looked at the strange straw doll in his hand and said to himself in confusion. A 3rd grade treasure can only block a blow, so the strength of the attack that this substitute can resist should be extraordinary. Xuan did not hesitate. A drop of bright red blood flowed from the tip of his finger and dripped into the face of the straw doll. Then, a wisp of spiritual consciousness was separated and penetrated into the body of the straw doll. After absorbing his drop of blood, the tightly wrinkled facial features of the substitute evil baby slowly stretched out, and it was vaguely similar to Xuan. He realized that he had a close connection with the normal evil straw doll. With a thought, the 7 or 8-inch substitute evil baby kept shrinking and became half a finger long, hidden between Xuan's belt. It has a few more defensive abilities. The 3rd grade Immaculate Jade can detect nearby evil spirits. The glass bone forging method and the Great Void Dragon transformation chapter enhance physical fitness. The substitute evil infant can block fatal blows. With the ordinary 2nd grade red scale armor magic weapon, the defense is already high enough. Xuan couldn't help but sigh. However, how can this grass puppet be rewarded with a ball of light when it breaks through? He couldn't help but feel a little confused. Grass puppets are difficult to define. They are called spirit beasts, but they don't have flesh and blood. They are called puppets, but they have some simple autonomous behaviors. After breaking through, they have the intelligence of a 2 or 3-year-old baby. This was bought at the casual cultivator market in Linyang Market, when he was still in the 2nd level of key training. According to the stall owner, this grass puppet is of the 1st grade, but it is on the verge of being abandoned. Xuan saw that it was still somewhat useful, so he reluctantly spent a few spirit stones to buy it to help guard the spirit field. Because the grass puppet patrolled the spiritual field diligently and faithfully every day, and had made great contributions by blocking a heavy blow for him when the monks attacked at night with their spears. Therefore, once the 1st grade treasure, the grass spirit essence liquid, was opened from the perfect quality firefly grass light ball, Xuan stuffed it into its tumor. Unexpectedly, after continuously absorbing the grass spirit essence liquid containing rich plant spiritual power, it actually broke through to the 2nd grade stage today. Breaking through to the 2nd grade and getting this special 3rd grade substitute evil infant is a bit unexpected. According to the previous experience of raising red-bearded carp and iron-clawed crab, after they enter the mature stage, there will be a light ball reward. Unexpectedly, there will also be a reward when breaking through the own grade, and it seems to be more generous. The strength of the monster itself is constrained by the bloodline. For example, Xuan Shenbeiluan, who Xuan has been keen on hugging recently, learned after feeding it that, although it is currently a 3rd grade strength, it has the potential of a 7th grade monster. It will be easy to break through the grade during its growth period. But the iron claw crabs that were raised before, affected by their own blood, can basically only be at the 1st grade stage, and it is difficult to break through. Of course, if a large amount of resources are piled up to help it improve its strength, there is also a certain chance that it can break through to the 2nd grade, but that is not worth the loss. It seems that if you raise a high grade monster beast, you will get a light ball reward when it grows up and its grade is promoted, and you will also get a reward when it is fully mature. Although the cloud stepping lynx is only a 1st grade monster beast, it is a different species of monster beast, and the wind falcon is a 2nd grade monster beast. Now it is a 1st grade strength in the larval stage, and it still has certain potential. Besides, if the blood is not enough, resources can make up for it. As an ordinary spiritual plant master, I still have this ability. Xuan thought confidently, turned his head, and saw the young wind falcon with its light blue wings spread out, and its belly facing up, and he was furious. Get up. Hurry up and absorb and refine the spiritual power. How can you sleep at such a young age? The young wind falcon turned over with difficulty, and looked at Xuan in confusion. After seeing Xuan's serious expression, his belly contracted and relaxed, pretending to be practicing hard. Seeing this, Xuan showed a helpless expression, and entered the house. He took out several materials from the storage bag, and placed them on the table one by one. After checking all the dragons and pythons in Kyan Long Lake, and exchanging them for the fairy peach and the flame fruit spirit seeds, he finally had time to prepare the potion to assist in practicing Taeksuhua Longpian. According to the summary of the practice in his mind, he put in various materials and dragon blood on time, and in the right amount. In the huge wooden barrel, there was half a barrel of dark red potion, and bubbles appeared on the surface from time to time. A strong and violent blood rushed into Xuan's mouth and nose, making every tiny part of his body restless. Xuan held his breath and slowly immersed his whole body in the dark red liquid. He followed the exercise route of Taeksuhua Langpian to drive the spiritual power in his body to operate slowly. As time passed, Lu Xuan gradually felt a mysterious power pouring into his body, constantly stimulating and nourishing his tendons, bones, muscles, veins, etc. Unconsciously, an almost transparent dragon-shaped airflow appeared in the dark red liquid in the barrel. The airflow circled and danced around Lu Xuan's body, wrapping him tightly inside. With a crash, Lu Xuan emerged naked from the dark red liquid. On his chest, back, and limbs, faint red lines could be seen, like a giant dragon with bared fangs and claws. It has been about an hour since I started practicing. These lines are just a slight sequelae after absorbing the potion. After the potion's power is completely digested, they will disappear on their own. Then, I can prepare for the second soaking in the dragon's blood. Lu Xuan put on his robe and muttered to himself. He couldn't help but wave his arms, bringing a whistling wind. All my abilities have been slightly improved. Strength, speed, physique. Lu Xuan felt the subtle changes in his body. The first time he used the potion to assist in practicing the Great Void Dragon chapter, the effect was very obvious, and he could feel the improvement in his body strength. When he made a full strength attack posture, there was even a faint sense of majesty. When he relaxed, the faint majesty immediately disappeared, and Lu Xuan returned to his identity as an ordinary spiritual plant master. Chapter 180, Spirit Seed Mutation. For Lu Xuan, physical training is just a snack after a meal, and farming is the main course. In the following period of time, in addition to raising the dragon and python every day, and taking care of the burning wood, he stayed in the yard for the rest of the time, carefully cultivating spiritual plants, and raising spiritual beasts. After the last batch of firefly grass was picked, he planted 150 of the remaining 200 spiritual seeds in the empty spiritual field area to improve his cultivation, and condense the spiritual seeds. He planted the remaining 50 in the cave, to keep company with the Yin-Hui. Then, he dug a channel between the ancient well and the cave to introduce the Yin-Han spring water into the cave to further improve the spiritual environment in the cave. After planting the Yin-Hui, the cave had limited space, and planting 50 firefly grasses seemed a bit crowded. Lu Xuan planned to change the growth environment of these firefly grasses to see if he could slowly affect the characteristics of the firefly grasses after they matured. In the cave, after the Yin-Han spring water from the ancient well was introduced, the only place that could be called a special environment was this cave. In order to influence the characteristics of spiritual plants through the environment, long-term effects are required, which is difficult to achieve artificially. Lu Xuan can only look forward to having more choices after breaking through to the foundation building stage. At that time, he must choose a mountain with a complex spiritual environment to cultivate various spiritual plants and facilitate the mutation of spiritual plants. The 200 spiritual firefly grass seeds planted soon took root and sprouted, and a small section of tender green and slender leaves grew out, which was very pleasing. The fairy peach and flame fruit seeds planted before also sprouted. 3 small pink and white peach branches trembled gently in the breeze, and the little pink tender leaves that grew out swayed with them. At a glance, there was a sense of amorous feelings. Zuzi, I want milky white Zuzi. Lu Xuan stared for a while, and strange thoughts emerged in his mind. He took a deep breath, cast a purification spell on himself, and instantly entered the sage mode, without desire or demand. At the Xuanshang vine, the black beetles that had been in the egg state finally hatched one after another. More than a dozen black insect chambers were densely packed on the Xuanshang vine, and they were clearly separated from the insect chambers established by the other 2 kinds of demon insects. The 3 kinds of demon insects, the cloaked cicada, the black beetle, and the silver mantis, had all been tamed by Lu Xuan, so they got along relatively peacefully and grew together with the Xuanshang vine. There are more than 20 of the 3 kinds of demon insects, which is enough for the early growth of the Xuanshang vine. If there are more, the balance established between them will be lost. When they grow to a certain stage, we will find a few good demon insects to coexist with the Xuanshang vine. Lu Xuan sighed as he looked at the strange-shaped Xuanshang vine. In the spiritual field, the other spiritual plants were growing very well. Under Lu Xuan's careful cultivation, they all worked hard to grow so as to bring him the light ball reward as soon as possible. After inspecting the spiritual field, Lu Xuan came to the ancient well with obscure patterns drawn on it, and took out 50 spirit firefly grass spirit seeds placed in the cold spring water. The spirit seed has been induced under the icy conditions for a while, and it is time to test the results. The dry and slender spirit seed in his hand has not changed much in shape. After being nourished by the spring water for quite a long time, it just looks a little fuller than before. Holding it in his hand, there is a faint sense of coldness. Lu Xuan took the spirit seed and came to an empty spiritual field area. He performed the earth-inducing technique, and the structure of the spiritual soil in front of him changed slightly. A narrow crack appeared, and the spirit firefly grass spirit seed was included in it. Lu Xuan's mind was focused on the spirit seed in the spiritual soil, and suddenly, a thought emerged from his mind. Spirit firefly grass, a spirit plant with no grade, can be used as a material for refining several healing pills after maturity. Because the spirit seed is in a damaged state, the cultivated spirit firefly grass may not enter the mature period normally, and the quality will be greatly affected. It's a bad start, but it's expected. Lu Xuan had already prepared for the spirit seed to be damaged after being stimulated, and continued to plant another spirit firefly grass spirit seed expressionlessly. Spirit firefly grass, no grade, no changes, normal spiritual seed. He continued to plant the third spiritual seed. One thought after another emerged in Lu Xuan's mind. Spirit firefly grass, no grade, alien spiritual plant, stimulated by icy spiritual power during the spiritual seed period. After maturity, the plant contains a slight ice spiritual power. Finally, a spiritual seed was successfully induced. The alien spiritual firefly grass containing ice spiritual power, although it did not improve the grade, it is also a good start. Lu Xuan was very pleased to see a mutant spiritual firefly grass spiritual seed. He had long known from Uncle He that improving spiritual plant varieties requires long-term experiments and cannot be achieved overnight. Therefore, he had already prepared for a long battle. One by one, Lu Xuan planted spiritual seeds, and through his grasp of their status, he judged the changes of each spiritual seed after induction. In the end, 14 spiritual firefly grass spiritual seeds failed to be induced, and the quality of the spiritual firefly grass planted after maturity was much worse than before. What's worse, it could not take root and sprout, and became a waste seed. 5 spiritual seeds were successfully induced, and became mutated spiritual plants. The spiritual firefly grass cultivated had a slight ice spiritual power. The remaining 31 did not change at all. Lu Xuan sorted these spiritual seeds and put them away. He went into the house and took out the remaining 50 spiritual seeds that were placed in the alchemy furnace and baked carefully with a slow fire. After planting them in the spiritual field, the 50 spiritual seeds were screened into 3 categories. The environment in the alchemy furnace seemed to have a stronger induction. Among the 50 spiritual seeds, only 20 remained the same without any change. Among the remaining spiritual seeds, 23 spiritual seeds showed negative conditions and failed to be induced. Fortunately, 7 spiritual seeds successfully mutated and had a slight fire spiritual power after maturity. Although the alchemy fire has been controlled to the lowest level, its destructiveness and irritation are still stronger than the spring water in the ancient well, so more damaged or even useless spiritual seeds are obtained. Lu Xuan analyzed in his heart. In terms of improving spiritual plant varieties, he found a big advantage of his own. When other spiritual plant masters improve spiritual plant varieties, they need to plant all the induced spiritual seeds and wait until they grow to a certain stage before they can select the spiritual plants that have successfully mutated. As for him, as long as he buries the spiritual seeds in the spiritual soil, he can judge the changes of the spiritual seeds after induction and directly select the mutated spiritual plants. The failed spiritual seeds can be directly discarded and eliminated, and the remaining spiritual seeds that remain in their original state can be repeatedly induced until they succeed or fail. In this way, although the cost in the early stage is higher, a large number of mutated spiritual plants can be collected in a short time, which is convenient for later experiments, and greatly shortens the time for improving spiritual plant varieties. In the next period of time, what I have to do is to induce the remaining ordinary spiritual seeds again, and then cultivate mutated spiritual plants, and obtain a large number of mutated spiritual seeds through the method of spiritual seed condensation. Induce again, condense seeds again, and continue in such a virtuous cycle, and I will definitely be able to improve the spiritual seeds of the firefly grass. Xuan thought confidently. Chapter 181. Cultivation is useless, but nothing else matters. He put the ordinary firefly grass that did not change after induction back into the previous environment, and continued the experiment. After rounds of experiments, the remaining 31 firefly grass seeds placed in the ancient well finally had 9 mutated seeds, and the 20 seeds in the alchemy furnace were screened out, to have 5 mutated seeds. The remaining seeds were irreversibly damaged. After planting, the quality of the mature plants was low, and some of them were even completely abandoned, and would not grow plants. The 40 nice seeds that had successfully mutated were planted by him in the cold cave, slightly isolated from the other 50 firefly grasses that had already sprouted. The 12 fire seeds could only be planted in the conventional way due to the limited environment of the cave spirit field. Xuan cast a low-level fire spell on them from time to time to nourish them with slight fire spirit power. After all, the number of spiritual seeds is limited, and the environment of the spiritual field is average. When I break through to the foundation building stage and condense more spiritual seeds, I can change the conditions for inducing spiritual seeds, and thus summarize the most likely way for spiritual seeds to mutate. Xuan sighed as he looked at the mutated spiritual plants in the spiritual field. However, the successful mutation is a good start. When the cultivation level breaks through, these mutated spiritual plants containing ice or fire spiritual power can almost get a large number of spiritual seeds, and they can be planted on a large scale. In the following period of time, since there were already 2 long-term tasks of raising dragon monsters and cultivating burning wood, Xuan did not go to the General Affairs Hall to take on new tasks. He focused on observing and cultivating the mutated spiritual firefly grass, and spent the rest of his time practicing hard to prepare for the attempt to break through the foundation building stage. Time flies, and 2 months have passed in the blink of an eye. Brother Lu, I'm here to see you. That day, a familiar call came from outside the yard. Xuan instantly recognized that it was Bailey Giant King's voice, and smiled as he opened the door to the yard. A handsome face with eyes narrowed into 2 slits came into view. Giant King is here, please come in. Haha, I guessed that you were at home, Brother Lu. There are only a few disciples in the sect who stay at home like you. Bailey Giant King carried a piece of monster meat of unknown species, and went straight into the courtyard. Brother Lu, this is the monster meat I killed from that newly formed secret realm. I brought it here for you to taste, and have a meal here. I've been craving your cooking skills for a long time. Bailey Giant King walked into the small kitchen next door without hesitation, and said with a smile, okay, I'll show you my skills later. Xuan processed the monster meat a little, came to the courtyard, and looked at Bailey Giant King who was teasing the young wind falcon. You went to that newly discovered secret realm some time ago. What happened? It's a new secret realm, with many opportunities and treasures. Besides, I have the protection of the foundation building uncle, so I will go if I can. I stayed there for a while, and obtained several rare spiritual medicines, 2 of which are of the 3rd grade level. The opportunity is pretty good. As for danger, I only encountered it once. At that time, I accidentally encountered a 3rd grade monster with a few fellow disciples. I sent a message to contact the nearby foundation building uncle, and the uncle quickly came to kill the monster. The valuable part of the monster was taken away by the uncle, and I got some scraps, and a lot of monster meat. Here, it's the piece I just brought over. Bailey Giant King curled his lips towards the kitchen. Brother Lu, such a good opportunity, didn't you go to the secret realm with us? He asked Xuan curiously. Xuan waved the blade in his hand into a trail of after images and replied nonchalantly. Giant King, you know me. I prefer quietness to movement. Compared to going out to explore secret realms and look for opportunities, I would rather stay in the sect, cultivate and take care of spiritual plants, and raise and feed spiritual beasts. Bailey Giant King nodded gently. Seeing that Lu Xuan was busy, he came to the yard on his own and teased Xio from time to time. The spiritual field was mainly at the back of the yard, covered by a formation. He had no idea of spying and did not rush into it. More than half an hour later, Lu Xuan came out with 5 or 6 pots of steaming dishes. He took out a pot of spiritual wine from the room, poured a cup each, and drank it all. The spiritual wine was mellow and continuous. Lu Xuan picked up a piece of stir-fried monster meat and put it into his mouth. An extremely fragrant and tender taste filled every part of his mouth, and the rich spiritual power flowed down from his throat and merged into his limbs and bones, warming his whole body. As expected of a third-grade demon beast, the meat is obviously not ordinary. Lu Xuan sighed and quickly picked up the second piece with his chopsticks and swallowed it whole. It's mainly because of your good cooking skills, Brother Lu. The taste of my own cooking is far worse. Bailey Giant King narrowed his eyes and said with satisfaction. Lu Xuan smiled without saying anything, picked up 2 pieces of demon beast meat and threw them in front of the stepping cloud lynx and the young wind falcon. After eating and drinking, Giant King, I remember you seemed to say that your grandfather was an outer disciple of the Xianjian sect. I believe you have a lot of knowledge about how the sect's disciples break through to the foundation building realm. Grandpa did tell me a lot about the sect. Bailey Giant King replied subconsciously. He seemed to realize something, and his tone paused, and his spiritual consciousness swept over Lu Xuan's body. Fuck. Brother Lu, are you ready to break through the foundation building realm? His narrowed eyes suddenly widened to an unprecedented roundness, and his expression was full of surprise. I was lucky to reach that point, and I have been planning to break through in one fell swoop recently. Lu Xuan smiled calmly. I just broke through to the perfection of key training, and I thought my cultivation level was increasing fast enough. I didn't expect that you, Brother Lu, would quietly try to break through the foundation building stage. Bailey Giant King looked a little dazed, and he was surprised by the speed of Lu Xuan's cultivation. How can I improve my cultivation quickly? Brother Lu, teach me. He came back to his senses, and looked at Lu Xuan with some admiration. I just use the time I spent exploring secret realms, and competing for opportunities to practice. Lu Xuan said calmly. Although I have a special liking for cultivating spiritual plants, it won't take me long. The rest of the time, I practice hard day and night. In addition, I mostly use the spiritual plants I cultivate to exchange for elixirs that improve my cultivation. With both methods, I have achieved today's situation. However, this also has a lot of disadvantages. I have cultivation but nothing else. I don't have time to practice those strange techniques, and I don't have extra spirit stones to buy protective talismans and powerful magic tools. If I run into other cultivators of the same level, I'm afraid I will end up in a miserable defeat after a few rounds. Lu Xuan said with regret, which well portrayed the image of an ordinary spiritual plant master who only wants to increase his cultivation and has no time to take care of other things. I see. Without techniques, talismans, and magic tools that match his cultivation, it is indeed not perfect. However, as long as Brother Lu successfully breaks through to the foundation building stage, he will have time to make up for these. By then, he can also be as good as other cultivators of the same level. Bailey Giant King comforted gently. Chapter 182 Xuan Sword Scabbard. I'm not eager to pursue those things. Lu Xuan said in a deep voice. I heard that, after breaking through the foundation building stage, you can own a mountain alone. If that's true, I can plant more spiritual plants in greater quantities and varieties. There was a hint of expectation in his eyes. For him, there was really no need to pursue spells, talismans, magic tools, elixirs, etc. Planting spiritual plants and harvesting light balls will naturally appear. So, Brother Lu, you worked so hard to break through to the foundation building stage in order to have better conditions for cultivating spiritual plants? Bailey Giant King asked with his head tilted, somewhat incredulously. That's true. Hearing Lu Xuan's affirmative answer, he couldn't help but hold his forehead with a helpless expression. After a period of silence, Bailey Giant King spoke first. There are many strange methods to break through the foundation building. Among them, the foundation building pill is the most common way to break through, and it plays an important role in the breakthrough process. Taking the foundation building pill and breaking through with the power of the pill has the highest success rate, and the process is also extremely simple and gentle. Most cultivators use this method. However, the foundation building pill is firmly in the hands of those large sects. Only occasionally does the pill spread to the outside world. The recipe of the foundation building pill is unheard of, and is regarded as a core secret by the sect. The foundation building pill is a third-grade pill. The price is not particularly expensive, but it is generally out of stock. It is difficult for casual cultivators to purchase it through normal channels. Bailey Giant King said slowly. Lu Xuan nodded gently, indicating that he understood. The sect family controlled the foundation building pill, and also controlled the promotion channels for most casual cultivators. If you want to break through to the foundation building realm, you must join the sect family. Therefore, the sect family absorbs those with outstanding talents, and continues to strengthen themselves. Once the outer disciples of the sect have accumulated enough spiritual energy, they can apply to the sect to break through the foundation building realm. When the first breakthrough occurs, the sect will provide a foundation building pill for free. If it fails, the second time it will be sold to the sect disciples at 50% of the price, and the third time it will need to be purchased at full price. In addition, when the disciples try to break through, the sect will also provide more conveniences, such as special spiritual veins, to recuperate the body and mind, and protection by seniors of the foundation building realm, etc. Of course, this is only the way for ordinary disciples to break through. As for those with strong backgrounds and extraordinary talents, in addition to the foundation building pill, there are also various natural treasures to assist in the breakthrough, and even powerful people in the Giandan realm will personally protect them. Bailey Giant King said the latter, with a hint of envy in his eyes. Lu Xuan nodded in agreement. He dared not even think about the powerful people in the Giandan realm protecting him. The two chatted for a while, and Bailey Giant King suddenly asked, Brother Lu, there is a sword fight at Dao Jian Lu. Many fellow disciples who are proficient in swordsmanship have made an appointment to exchange swordsmanship. I plan to stay there for a while. Do you want to go and see it together? Sword fight at Dao Jian Lu. Lu Xuan's expression flashed a trace of hesitation. After joining the sect, he rarely participated in the sect's foundation building monks' teaching and fellow disciples' exchanges. He only got to know some fellow monks through the spiritual plant and spiritual beast mission. It's very exciting. Brother Lu, if you don't want to participate, you can watch the fight from the side. Then I'll go with you to see it. Lu Xuan said with a smile. He was not interested in fighting, but watching a fight was different. He simply packed up and opened the formation. Thick white fog covered the entire yard. Then, he and Bailey Giant King each rode a spiritual crane and went to Dao Jian Lu. The Dao Jian Pavilion is located on the top of a mountain that is hundreds of feet high. It is built of dark blue boulders. The boulders are very tough and ordinary attacks cannot leave marks on them. Moreover, it has a certain recovery ability, and cracks and holes can recover to normal on their own. Bailey Giant King brought Lu Xuan to a huge platform on the top of the mountain that was dozens of feet long and wide. Dozens of cultivators had gathered in the middle of the platform. Two of them were practicing swordsmanship, and their swords were as powerful as rainbows. Brother Lu, wait here. I will show you my style later. Bailey Giant King instructed Lu Xuan, and walked confidently into the crowd. Lu Xuan nodded, found a place to sit down, and looked at several fighting scenes with some curiosity. It would be nice if there were some spiritual fruits like melon seeds, so I could eat melon seeds while watching the show. He thought with some regret. There were no large-scale competitions among disciples in the sect. From time to time, some like-minded people or those who had some grudges against each other would come to the Dao Jian Pavilion to practice and fight. Lu Xuan has always been kind to others, so naturally he has never had the opportunity to enter the sword fighting pavilion. On the bluestone platform, the fighting became more and more intense, making Lu Xuan a little overwhelmed and not knowing where to look. Many of his fellow disciples did have extraordinary attainments in swordsmanship. The sword energy was divided, the sword energy became silk, and the giant swordsmanship was a special effect blockbuster. Lu Xuan even saw a cultivator offering a sword formation, with more than 10 flying swords shining against each other, making thousands of changes, and looking very handsome. He secretly compared it. Although his Zhengjin sword art was only of the first grade, due to the absorption of a large number of experience packs, his control of the sword art was equivalent to the master level. Even among the many sword geniuses on the Bluestone platform, he could be in the forefront. If the third grade Zunli sword pill lurking in his danshan was added, he could basically crush the whole audience. While thinking, he watched the show carefully. Bailey Jian King had a good attainment in swordsmanship. Lu Xuan had seen him win 3 games in a row, and he was very proud. Suddenly, he sensed a movement in the storage bag on his waist. His spiritual consciousness probed into it, and found that a scabbard was trembling slightly in the corner. Why did this scabbard suddenly react? I almost forgot about it. Lu Xuan said to himself. The scabbard was attracted by the Zunli sword pill in his danshan after the Wang family forced him into the secret realm when he was in Linyang Market. At that time, the head of the Wang family and a ghost level skeleton were both chasing this thing. He therefore deduced that the scabbard had an extraordinary origin, but unfortunately he didn't figure out its origin for a long time, and kept it in the storage bag to collect dust. Feeling the ancient scabbard trembling more and more, Lu Xuan sent a message to Bailey Jian King, who was resting not far away, and got up and left. Back in the cave, he opened the mist hiding maze, so that the yard was covered by white fog. Then, he took out the mysterious scabbard from the storage bag. The scabbard was simple in style and mottled, which showed that it had gone through countless years. Unfortunately, it was always empty inside, and no strange existence was found. Lu Xuan held the scabbard in his hand, feeling his body trembling faster and faster. Why did it suddenly react like this? When in the secret realm, it seemed to be attracted by the Zunli sword pill in his body. Lu Xuan pondered for a moment, and with a thought, several sword beams emerged from his body, surrounded by black air, with a sinister sword intent, and faint electric arcs jumping on the blade. The sword beam suddenly turned, and drilled into the empty gap of the scabbard. The top of the scabbard tilted back, and it seemed to make a clanging sword sound, which was pleasant. Seeing this, Lu Xuan focused his mind on the ancient scabbard. A thought flashed through his mind. The Xuan scabbard, an unknown treasure, is forged from the outer sword stone. It can be used to warm the sword energy in it. The longer the time, the greater the power released by the sword energy. You can also put the sword into the scabbard to slowly temper the sword body, remove the impurities of the sword, and improve the quality and grade of the sword. The spirituality is damaged. Unknown treasure? What is it? Lu Xuan looked at the ancient scabbard in his hand with a puzzled look. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183. Mine is very big. Please bear with it. It can nourish the sword energy and temper the flying sword. This scabbard is pretty good. Lu Xuan looked at the ancient scabbard in his hand and thought secretly. His spiritual consciousness slowly probed into the interior of the scabbard, and found that the sword beams he had shot into were swimming freely like fish. Let's nurture it first, and see the effect. Lu Xuan put the scabbard on the table, and came to the spiritual field. He carefully observed the growth of each spiritual plant, and used the spiritual rain technique, wood growth technique and other techniques, to nourish the spiritual plants from time to time. Soon, more than an hour passed, and Lu Xuan returned to the house, and picked up the Xuan scabbard. Compared with the beginning, the Zunli sword beam inside the scabbard was actually a little stronger. He placed the ancient scabbard flat in front of him, held the scabbard with his right hand, and pulled it hard. Suddenly, several black sword beams shot out from the scabbard, whistling and cutting a huge rock in the yard into pieces. The surface of the fragments was smooth, and the sharpness of the sword beams could be seen. After being nurtured for a while, the speed and destructive power of the sword's light have increased slightly. This Xuan sword sheath is a good treasure. Lu Xuan could imagine that, if the sword energy was kept in the Xuan sword sheath for a long time, it would be able to exert great power once it was used. It can also temper the sword, and improve the quality of the flying sword. Lu Xuan took out a red flying sword from the storage bag. The flying sword was about 3 feet long, and there were fire cloud-like patterns on the sword. The flying sword was a second-grade red flame sword, a reward from the light ball. After harvesting the copper bone bamboo, he aimed the tip of the sword at the crack of the Xuan sword sheath, and planned to insert it directly into the scabbard. Just as it was about to enter the inside of the scabbard, an invisible diaphragm appeared at the crack of the scabbard, blocking the red flame sword outside. The simple scabbard trembled slightly, as if its whole body was resisting the insertion of the flying sword. What do you mean? Invisible sword energy can enter the body, but visible flying swords can't? What's that? Lu Xuan tried a few more times, but the Xuan sword sheath still refused to be inserted by the red flame sword. Unfortunately, the sword sheath is inserted by the flying sword, which is your fate, that you can't change. So, just let me put the red flame sword into your body. My flying sword is very big, just bear with it. Lu Xuan raised the corners of his mouth, and with a little force, the red flying sword suddenly broke through the invisible membrane on the surface of the crack and deeply penetrated into the scabbard. The scabbard trembled slightly, tightly wrapping the red sword body. Insert it for 10 days and a half months first, and see how the quenching effect is. Lu Xuan thought secretly. In the following time, he followed the usual practice, diligently cultivating spiritual plants every day, observing the abnormal spiritual firefly grass, adjusting his body and mind, and preparing to break through the foundation. Soon, a month and a half later, the first 200 ordinary spiritual firefly grasses planted began to mature. Lu Xuan carefully examined each one, and judged the growth of the spiritual firefly grass through the progress bar below. Because he was thinking about the foundation building, he did not pick the firefly grass that was fully mature as usual. Seeing that the progress bar was about full, he picked it. A total of 34 firefly grasses were picked. Perhaps because of the slight difference, only 3 were of perfect quality, and the others were of superior or good quality. He picked up the 34 white light balls on the ground one by one, and thoughts flashed through his mind. Cultivation, experience, and physical objects appeared, in turn like a horse-drawn lantern. Among them, the cultivation reward brought was nearly 6 years. Waves of pure spiritual power appeared in Lu Xuan's body out of thin air, impacting and washing the Danshan tendons like a tide. Oh, it's full, and it's about to overflow. Lu Xuan felt the incomparable spiritual power in his body, and couldn't help but sigh. Finally, I can try to impact the foundation building realm. He took a long breath, his eyes clear and bright. There were only a few foundation building cultivators in the huge Lanyang market. It was an unattainable existence for Lu Xuan at that time, but now, he might try to break through to that realm. He put away the other elixirs and talismans that he had opened from the light ball, came to the outside of the cave, and happily found an elegant spiritual crane. In the sky, the strong wind whistled past him, and Lu Xuan's heart was calm. About half an hour later, the spiritual crane landed on a 1,000-foot high peak. The tall mountain is called King Gaian Peak, which means to rise to the top. After the outer disciples of the Xianjian sect have cultivated to the perfection of key training, they can come to this mountain to apply for resources to break through the foundation building realm. Lu Xuan came to a huge, quiet and deep courtyard and strode into it. The main hall of the courtyard occupies a very large area, but there are only 3 cultivators inside, each reading an ancient and heavy book. Lu Xuan came to a charming female cultivator and whispered, "Uncle, I'm Lu Xuan. I have been lucky enough to cultivate to the perfect state of key training. I plan to try to break through the foundation building. Please confirm that I have passed it. Congratulations, nephew." Before issuing the foundation building pill, the 3 of us must confirm whether the spiritual energy in your body meets the requirements and check whether you have serious injuries, especially hidden diseases. I hope you can understand. Lu Xuan nodded to show that he understood. The foundation building pill is expensive, and it is impossible to give it to outer disciples for nothing. Therefore, it is necessary to confirm whether the disciples' cultivation meets the conditions for breaking through the foundation building. At the same time, breaking through the foundation building requires the cultivator to reach the best state of mind and body, so that there is greater hope. If there is any serious hidden danger left in any part of the body, it is likely to lead to the failure of the breakthrough. If you are not careful, you may end up with serious injuries. When entering the sect does not check the cultivators who sign up to join very strictly. After all, they are all outer disciples. Even if there are undercovers from other sects or evil demons sneaking in, the impact is not very big. But the foundation building is different. After successfully being promoted, one will become an inner disciple of the sect and have the opportunity to access various core secrets of the sect. This inspection is also to see the nature of the spiritual energy in the disciple's body, whether it has been polluted and invaded by evil spirits, etc. After Lu Xuan applied, the three took turns to confirm Lu Xuan's spiritual power and check his physical condition. They even took out a bronze mirror emitting a hazy green light and shone it on his whole body, but there was no reaction. Congratulations, nephew, you meet the requirements. I believe you have been preparing for a long time, just for today. The charming female cultivator said to Lu Xuan with a smile. Lu Xuan had expected this. Since the second level of key training, the spiritual energy in his body has basically come from the light ball reward. He rarely goes out, and the dirty spiritual energy in his body can basically be ignored. As for what hidden diseases are in his body, it's funny. Until key training is complete, he has not fought many times. There are also top level body training methods such as Liuli bone forging method and Texuhua Langpian. How could there be hidden diseases? Not to mention evil spirits. With the immaculate jade protecting his body, he is immune to all evil. In 3 days, please ask my nephew to come over and work with other fellow disciples to reach the foundation building stage. The female cultivator said softly to Lu Xuan. Chapter 184, Foundation Building. 3 days passed in a flash. Lu Xuan came to Qingyuan Peak again and entered the quiet courtyard with a peaceful expression. The 3 foundation building cultivators were still on duty in the main hall, and there were several other fellow disciples sitting on the side. From their round and full state, it can be known that they were also practicing Qi perfectly and preparing to break through the foundation building realm. The 3 foundation building cultivators smiled and nodded when they saw Lu Xuan coming in, expressing their goodwill. Lu Xuan bowed from a distance, found a corner to sit down, closed his eyes, and practiced in silence. After a while, the charming female foundation building cultivator came to the side of the crowd. Okay, all the outer disciples who are preparing to break through the foundation building realm in the near future have arrived. There are 7 people in total, among which 3 are trying to break through for the first time, 3 are trying for the second time, and 1 is already the third time. According to the rules of the sect, the first time, you can get a foundation building pill for free to impact the next realm. The second time you can get a foundation building pill at half price, and after the third time, you need to buy it at full price. Lu Xuan and others heard the words, and looked at each other. 4 of them walked forward, and handed the charming female cultivator different amounts of spirit stones. He noticed that one of the young men with a stern look took out at least 2,000 spirit stones. He must be the fellow disciple who tried to break through the foundation building realm for the third time. Lu Xuan felt a little more respect in his heart. The third attempt was not just about spending a lot of spirit stones, but also required great courage and determination. After failing to break through the foundation building realm, the spiritual energy in the cultivator's body would regress a lot. Although it did not fall to the 9th level of key training, it would take a long time to cultivate again to the perfect realm, where he could break through the foundation building realm next time. Not to mention the third time, Lu Xuan could fully imagine how much time and energy this stern young man had spent to be able to step into Qingyuan Peak for the third time. Therefore, he did not have any contempt in his heart, but only full of respect. This is your foundation building pill. Check it first, then enter the power transmission hall and use the quiet room inside to break through the foundation building realm. The female cultivator's spiritual consciousness came to Lu Xuan and the other 7 people, holding 7 small jade boxes. Lu Xuan took the jade box in front of him and opened it gently. In the middle of the jade box, a pill the size of a langan was lying quietly. There were many spiritual patterns on the surface of the pill, and a faint light was spreading. A strong spiritual energy rushed into Lu Xuan's sea of consciousness, making every tiny part of his body restless and eager for the pill. This is the key to breaking through the foundation pill. Lu Xuan looked at the pill in the jade box, feeling a lot of emotion in his heart. The rare pill that a casual cultivator might not get in his whole life can be given away for free here. The difference between the two is too big. After the 7 people confirmed that it was correct, the charming female cultivator went in front, and Lu Xuan and others followed behind, entering the quiet courtyard. Going down the stairs, Lu Xuan felt that the spiritual energy around him was getting richer and purer, much stronger than in his own cave. This junior brother looks a little unfamiliar. Have you just entered the sect? What should I call you? Lu Xuan was in the observation room, and a handsome young man beside him asked him in a low voice. Hello, senior brother. I'm Lu Xuan. I've been in the sect for a while, but I've been cultivating spiritual plants and practicing diligently on weekdays, so you may not have many opportunities to see me, Lu Xuan said with a smile. The handsome young man opened the chatterbox of the other people. Being able to practice to the level of impact foundation building at least shows that he has excellent talent. If he can get to know the other party before he breaks through to the foundation building, he may get an opportunity. Several people introduced each other's identities. Those who have had impact experience even shared their own experience, which benefited Lu Xuan and the other 3 newcomers a lot. After a while, the charming female cultivator led the 7 people to the depths of the ground. The white corridor was filled with rich and pure spiritual energy. There were dozens of quiet rooms on both sides. The doors were closed, and the walls, floors, doors, etc. were painted with mysterious and obscure patterns everywhere. Okay, we've arrived at our destination. These quiet rooms are located on a mid-level spiritual vein. Even for foundation building cultivators, when they enter a quiet room to practice, their cultivation speed will be much faster than normal. When you are in the quiet room, to break through to the foundation building realm, you can quickly absorb and restore spiritual energy. In addition, all the quiet rooms are located in a large spirit gathering formation. In each quiet room, there is also a strange fragrance that can calm the mind and make you wise, which can further help you break through to the foundation building realm. Finally, there is also an inner sect disciple in the late foundation building stage sitting underground. In case of any accidents, he can solve them as quickly as possible. You choose a quiet room by yourself. After resting for a while, you can officially break through to the foundation building realm. Everything goes well. Hearing this, Lu Xuan and the other 7 adjusted their breathing and saluted each other. Let's encourage each other. Let's encourage each other. He glanced at it casually and walked straight to a quiet room that was slightly remote. He opened the door and walked in with a calm expression. The quiet room was more elegant than Lu Xuan had imagined. There was no extra decoration, only a white jade cushion. On the wall opposite the cushion was an incense stick of unknown material. Wisps of light smoke drifted out from the incense stick, and the smell made Lu Xuan's mind agile and relaxed, with a sense of transcendence. He came to the white jade cushion and sat down cross-legged. He took out the 3rd grade foundation building pill from the jade box and swallowed it in one gulp. The surging medicinal power rushed out like a wild horse galloping through Lu Xuan's limbs. Lu Xuan bit his tongue and felt the medicinal power washing every muscle and bone in his body. The medicinal power covered every part of his body, strengthening Lu Xuan's bones, tendons, internal organs, and trying to repair the subtle hidden diseases in his body. Fortunately, Lu Xuan started from the 2nd level of key training and rarely fought with others, not to mention leaving hidden injuries. In addition, he practiced the 2 superior body refining techniques of Liuli bone forging method and Teksuhua Langpian, so his body was stronger than most key training perfect cultivators. The surging medicinal power flowed out from his limbs and gathered together, like a dam releasing floodwater, and the infinite medicinal power rushed to Lu Xuan's danshan. The vast amount of spiritual energy rose and fell, and Lu Xuan frantically practiced the small 5-element gong, trying his best to absorb the infinite medicinal power of the foundation building pill. With his body as the center, a spiritual energy vortex quietly formed. In the quiet room, the rich spiritual energy gathered rapidly and merged into the spiritual energy vortex. There seemed to be a slight sound in the chaotic danshan. A drop of spiritual liquid dripped from the void above the danshan and fell in the middle of the danshan. The gaseous spiritual energy turned into liquid mana, which also indicated the transition to the foundation building realm. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops. After an unknown amount of time, the amount of spiritual liquid in the danshan increased, gathering together to form a pool of spiritual liquid water. As the water rippled, the magic power surged, showing the rich spiritual energy contained in the spiritual liquid. After all the gaseous spiritual power was converted into spiritual liquid, the spiritual consciousness in Lu Xuan's sea of consciousness soared into the sky, left his body, and returned to his body. When it merged with the spiritual liquid in the danshan, there was a feeling of clearing the clouds and seeing the sun, as if entering a new world in an instant. Lu Xuan had a hidden realization in his heart, building the foundation, success. Chapter 185 In a sect. After years of hard training, I finally achieved the foundation. To be able to reach this point, I can't do without my hard training day and night. Of course, the light ball also played a little role in it. The triumphant Lu Xuan thought secretly in the quiet room. He felt the changes in every part of his body after breaking through the foundation. In the sea of consciousness, the spiritual consciousness is more than 3 times stronger than the perfect stage of key training. Whether it is the distance that can be extended or the perception of subtle points, it has been significantly improved. The strength of the physical body has also improved a lot. The blood flows like mercury. The slight movement of the bones will make a crackling sound. The whole body has the beauty of both strength and speed. In the key training stage, the lifespan of a cultivator is about 150 years. After 100 years old, the body begins to enter the stage of decline. For a foundation building cultivator, the lifespan is usually between 300 and 500 years. At once, he lives at least 100 years longer. The biggest change is the spiritual power. After the spiritual energy in the danshan turns into liquid, the spiritual energy contained in a drop of spiritual liquid is equivalent to at least 10% of the magic power in the perfect stage of key training. This makes the speed and power of the magic much higher. Of course, it also means that more magic related to spiritual plants can be performed, and more spiritual plants and spiritual beasts can be cultivated. After he slightly felt the changes from breaking through to the foundation building stage, he walked out of the quiet room. He walked through the corridor and came to a hall. In the hall, the charming female cultivator who was enjoying spiritual tea raised her head, and her spiritual consciousness swept over Lu Xuan, and a smile appeared on her face. Congratulations, fellow Daoist Lu. From now on, we will call each other senior sister and brother. Thank you, senior sister, I'm just lucky. The charming female cultivator naturally regarded Lu Xuan's words as self-deprecation. At such a young age, he was able to break through to the foundation building stage. It is impossible that it can be easily summarized by the word luck. Junior brother Lu came out the earliest. The other 6 are still in seclusion and breaking through. Junior brother, why don't you sit here, and I will tell you about the matters. After breaking through the foundation building stage, the charming female cultivator said softly, Junior brother, I couldn't ask for more. Thank you, senior sister. Lu Xuan readily agreed. Breaking through to the foundation building stage means becoming an inner disciple of the sect, and your identity is more deeply bound to the sect. At the same time, you can also access the sect's more core secrets and get more cultivation resources. Next, junior brother Lu needs to update your identity nameplate. Provide a drop of blood essence, a wisp of spiritual consciousness, and the sect will refine your life lamp. Lu Xuan nodded gently. The so-called life lamp should be able to control one's behavior to a certain extent, but this is also a necessary procedure to become the backbone of the sect. It is impossible to enjoy the rights brought by inner disciples without fulfilling the corresponding obligations. Anyway, he has a clean background. He is neither an undercover agent of other sects, nor has he connected with any demons and evil spirits. He entered the sect just to rely on a big force and farmed quietly. After you officially enter the inner sect, you will be able to enjoy the corresponding benefits. Junior brother Lu can go to the Sutra library to select the 3 foundation building stage skills and techniques. According to your cultivation and contribution to the sect will also distribute a certain number of sword seals every month. If you are good at a certain cultivation skill, you can apply for some corresponding resources for free according to your needs. For example, if you are good at alchemy, you can apply to the sect for alchemy materials, alchemy formulas and furnaces, etc. Of course, these are definitely not provided indefinitely. After exceeding a certain amount, you need to spend spirit stones or sword seals to buy them. In addition, entering the inner sect means that you can have a better cultivation environment, and you are also eligible to enter the secret realms and blessed lands belonging to the sect, and obtain various rare cultivation resources from them. The secret realms belonging to the sect. Is there a risk of injury or even life-threatening if you enter them? Lu Xuan asked curiously. Since it is under the jurisdiction of the sect, it is under the control of the sect. Every once in a while, they will organize a cleanup and kill those who may threaten the inner sect disciples. Lu Xuan nodded thoughtfully and then asked aloud. Sister, I heard that, after breaking through to the foundation building stage, you can choose an independent mountain as your cave. Is this true? Yes, this is the basic benefit of being an inner sect disciple. You can occupy a mountain for your own use according to the spiritual veins and spiritual land of the mountain and the inner sect. The charming female cultivator said with a smile. Lu Xuan felt a lot more relaxed. For him, owning a mountain with various spiritual environments for farming is more important than any other conditions. After breaking through to the foundation building stage, what kind of training mode will generally be there? It depends on the choice of the fellow disciples. In the key training stage, there will be fellow disciples at the foundation building level giving lectures to the outer disciples, but when it comes to the foundation building level, there will be no such one-on-many opportunities. There are more than 20 giant and uncle masters in the sect. Junior brother Lu can choose whether to join one of the factions, or practice on his own, or communicate and exchange ideas with other cultivators of the same level. Among the giant and uncle masters, are there any seniors in the sect who are proficient in cultivating spiritual plants, or raising spiritual beasts? It seems that there are no seniors who specialize in spiritual plants. However, there are 3 giant and uncle masters who have extremely deep attainments in the way of alchemy, and alchemy is often closely related to spiritual plants. Perhaps they are not necessarily proficient in spiritual plants. As for spiritual beasts, I know of one. That giant and uncle master is named Zijing. He raises many high-grade spiritual beasts, and has a close relationship with the sect's guardian spiritual beasts. Lu Xuan nodded to show that he understood. He has not yet decided whether to choose a giant and uncle master to join his sect. While the two were talking, one of the remaining 6 people in the quiet room walked out with a gloomy face, and the result of the breakthrough was obvious. When the man saw Lu Xuan, who was talking happily with the charming female cultivator in the hall, a hint of hidden jealousy flashed in his eyes. Seeing this, Lu Xuan did not react at all. He had just successfully broken through, but this fellow disciple had obviously failed to break through. It was inappropriate to say anything now, so he might as well choose to remain silent. Soon, people walked out of the quiet room one after another, with almost the same reaction as the previous person. Before entering the quiet room, several people had a common goal, and could encourage each other. After coming out, it was difficult to control their emotions better under the huge gap. Finally, the cold-blooded young man who tried to break through for the 3rd time walked out slowly with heavy steps, his face as hen. Seeing him like this, Lu Xuan sighed in his heart, and was even more fortunate that he had successfully broken through in one fell swoop. In the end, only 2 of the 7 people broke through successfully, namely Lu Xuan and a beautiful female cultivator, and the other 5 had to swallow the bitter fruit of failure. 2 of the 7 succeeded, less than 30% chance. It is not an easy task to break through to the foundation building stage. This is the cruel side of the cultivation world. He sighed in his heart, looking at the backs of the 5 people leaving sadly, and his mind became more determined to farm peacefully. It was with the reward of the light ball that his cultivation progressed rapidly, so that he was promoted to the foundation building stage and entered a new world. Chapter 186 I'm the master of the immortal mountain. High in the sky, Lu Xuan rode on a tall spiritual crane, flying through the clouds. He looked at the mountains and rivers that kept passing by below, and couldn't help but have the idea of soaring into the sky. As he got closer to the cave, this desire became stronger and stronger. He gently patted the head of the spiritual crane, and flew down with the clear cry of the spiritual crane. The wind was howling, and Lu Xuan flew through the air, dancing with the spiritual crane, which was a refreshing feeling. He gently landed on the mountain where the cave was located, waved goodbye to the spiritual crane, and his spiritual consciousness entered his danshan and found that only a small part of the spiritual liquid in the danshan was consumed. Lu Xuan raised the corner of his mouth, opened the formation, and entered the courtyard. Little ones, I'm back. The round belly of the young wind falcon fell on his head and then bounced up again. After several rounds, it finally occupied Lu Xuan's head steadily. This time, I can easily break through to the foundation building stage. In the future, I can better protect you and take you to eat delicious food and drink spicy food. Lu Xuan rubbed the soft belly of the young wind falcon bird and pulled the 2 tufts of grey hair on the tip of the ear of the stepping cloudlings and said with great pride. Although Xuan didn't understand what the foundation building meant, he could still clearly sense the joy in Lu Xuan's heart. The young wind falcon kept flying around Lu Xuan, and the stepping cloudlings occasionally let out a low roar with a lot of meaning. In a few days, we will move from here to a new mountain. By then, we will have an independent mountain and don't need to squeeze with other fellow disciples. After moving to the new place, you don't have to be locked up in the cave like now. You can move freely, especially you, who have no chance to practice flying skills, so you are fat like this bull. The young wind falcon nodded hurriedly, expressing his inner grievances, and the fat on his belly trembled. So, after we get to our new home, if you get fat again, that's unacceptable. Don't blame me for using some tricks. Lu Xuan said with a smile. Feng Falcon tilted his head, staring with his eyes, revealing a clear stupidity, as if he didn't understand what Lu Xuan said at all. Lu Xuan came to the spiritual field, and many spiritual plants were growing in excellent condition, especially the first planted 2nd grade streamer wood, which seemed to be entering the mature stage. If we need to move, everything else is fine. There are not many things, and we can take them away at once in the storage bag. The main problem is that there are so many spiritual plants in the spiritual field. Fortunately, there is the 3rd grade life bag. Even if the spiritual plants are transplanted, they will not lose their vitality in a short time. It can be said that the activity of the spiritual plants is guaranteed to the greatest extent. Lu Xuan looked at the many spiritual plants growing well in the spiritual field and sighed in his heart. Of course, before preparing to move, there are 2 long-term tasks that need to be handed over. They are raising dragons and pythons in Xuan Long Lake, and helping the foundation building monks to care for and cultivate the burning wood. With his current status as a foundation building cultivator, it was not appropriate for him to take care of those 1st and 2nd grade dragon pythons. Moreover, the potential of the dragon pythons he raised had been basically tapped, and there had been no new dragon pythons that had broken through for quite a long time. Xuan Long Lake, in front of the stone house, Lu Xuan found Huang Yuan and said with a smile, "Brother Huang, I need to tell you something. My breeding task is going to end now. I would like to trouble you to help find a fellow disciple to hand over." Huang Yuan looked at Lu Xuan standing not far away and clearly felt that in his every move, there was a sense of natural harmony between man and nature. He thought of a possibility, and his spiritual consciousness carefully scanned Lu Xuan's body. "Master Lu, fellow Daoist Lu, have you broken through to the foundation building realm?" "I'm lucky, I broke through by chance," Lu Xuan replied with a smile. "Then I should call you Uncle Master Lu." Hearing Lu Xuan's confirmation, Huang Yuan, who had always been resolute and calm, was stunned for a moment, then came back to his senses and bowed respectfully. Although Lu Xuan was much younger than him, in the cultivation world, everything was decided by cultivation, so it was only right for him to call his fellow disciple Lu Xuan Uncle Master. "Uncle Master Lu, I will help you find a junior fellow as soon as possible, and then count and settle the remaining dragons and pythons, and convert part of the reward to you." Huang Yuan did what he said and left the stone house with great vigor and determination. First, he evaluated the growth of the remaining dozens of dragons raised by Lu Xuan in Xuan Long Lake and converted them into 60 sword seals for him. Lu Xuan knew that this was much higher than the normal conversion price, and he could not refuse, so he had no choice but to accept it. After handing over the Xuan Long Lake dragon task, he came to the courtyard of the Wenwen female cultivator who planted the burning yuan wood and told her about his breakthrough to the foundation establishment. When one female cultivator naturally would not hire a foundation establishment cultivator to cultivate and care for the burning Yuan wood for her. After the two talked for a while, the female cultivator took the initiative to propose a replacement and wanted to reward Lu Xuan again. Lu Xuan had already obtained the 3rd grade poisonous shuttlewood spirit seed from her, and he was satisfied. In addition, he declined politely because he had limited work to do. After handing over the 2 tasks, he began to change his identity. He reported his breakthrough to the foundation building stage to the corresponding hall of the sect, updated the identity nameplate he had been carrying with him, and then extracted a drop of blood essence, differentiated a wisp of spiritual consciousness, and handed it to the late stage foundation building senior brother of the discipline hall to refine it into a life lamp that was closely related to him. After everything was ready, Lu Xuan packed up the spiritual plants in the spiritual field, dismantled the mist-hidden maze, looked back at the cave, where he had stayed for nearly 2 years, and turned away. With the new identity nameplate, he passed through several large formations, continued to go deeper into the sect, and finally stopped in front of a beautiful mountain. The mountain was the new residence he chose, after weighing it over and over again. The entire mountain is about 200 feet high, and many exotic flowers and plants are planted everywhere, with clouds and mist, magnificent and magnificent. According to the fellow disciples who introduced the foundation building, the mountain is located on the branch of a large spiritual vein. The spiritual energy is much richer than the previous cave. At some nodes of the spiritual vein, the spiritual energy even turns into tangible objects. On the mountain, the area of the spiritual field is not very large, and Lu Xuan needs to cultivate it separately. However, under the branch of the spiritual vein, there is an area of special spiritual soil. According to the fellow disciples who built the foundation, it is very suitable for growing spiritual plants. Deep in the mountain, there is a condensation of earth fire, forming a magma river around the branch. On a flat land on the mountainside, there is a small bottomless lake. The faint spiritual energy rises from the lake to the air and gradually dissipates. Lu Xuan also saw a few fat spiritual fish and even a huge black turtle, deep in the lake. On the shady side of the mountain top, there is a cave entrance with a whistling black wind. When it blows on Lu Xuan, with his physique in the foundation building realm and the 2 major body refining methods, he can feel the coldness. Lu Xuan's spiritual consciousness swept across the entire mountain, and he couldn't help but have the idea of showing his skills. I'm the master of the sacred mountain. This sacred mountain is under my control. Chapter 187. Never have I planted such a rich field. Bold words naturally need to be fulfilled with practical actions. Lu Xuan immediately began to transform the Lingshan mountain and transplant spiritual plants. He first took out the 4th grade Xuanchang vine from the Sheng bag. Sheng bag is only 3rd grade, and the effect on slowing down the loss of vitality is not so obvious for the 4th grade Xuanchang vine, so Lu Xuan transplanted it as soon as possible. He swept the mountain with his spiritual consciousness and found an open space at the node of the branch with the most abundant spiritual energy and planted the Xuanchang vine. The terrain around the open space is complex and the environment is humid, which is suitable for the growth and reproduction of various monster insects. On the strange plant, the insect chambers formed by the 3 types of monster insects, the hidden winged cicada, the silver-lined mantis, and the black beetle, do not interfere with each other and maintain a symbiotic relationship with the Xuanchang vine. Then, Lu Xuan took out the 3rd grade spiritual plants in the Sheng bag first according to the grade. He planted 3 fairy peaches in a slightly remote place on the mountain, to prevent his fellow disciples or spiritual beasts from being accidentally affected by them, and making a joke. Pink leaves have grown on the branches of the white peach tree. Not long after it was planted, a faint miasma spread from the trunk of the fairy peach tree, and the surrounding air was filled with a scent of lust. Don't be astringent. Lu Xuan cast a purification spell on himself and said to the fairy peach righteously. Next, there was a sword raising good and 2 dragon vines. Lu Xuan planted them in the special spiritual soil to see if there would be any effect. He also brought the abandoned flying sword from the cave abode before and used the waste to build a bracket for the sword raising good. The 2 dragon vines, nourished by the abundant dragon essence and blood, grew much better than the first generation of dragon vines. The remaining 3rd grade jade scale fruit was planted in an area with sparse vegetation, where there were many minerals, which was more suitable for the growth of jade scale fruit that loved jade spiritual minerals. After the 3rd grade spiritual plants were processed, Xuan began to transplant the 2nd grade spiritual plants in the life bag. 2 gloomy Yinhua trees were planted near the cave entrance where the black wind was howling. 4 ice radish fruits were planted around the small lake, and 10 flame fruits were planted on the surface of the underground fire, nourished by the scorching breath day and night. 2 sword grasses were also planted in the special spiritual soil. The sword body was straight facing the sky, and it was already 2 feet long. The fine sword intent flowed freely around it, cutting out tiny sword marks. The remaining 2 streamer woods were not too particular, and were planted in a spiritual field with rich spiritual power. Finally, the remaining ones were the non-grade spiritual firefly grass. 14 mutant spiritual fireflies with ice spiritual power and the 50 spiritual fireflies planted in the cave at the beginning were planted by Xuan around the entrance of the Black Wind Cave, stimulated by the cold black wind. 12 fire-type mutant spiritual fireflies were planted on the surface of the underground fire river, and the remaining 166 ordinary spiritual fireflies were planted normally. After all the spiritual plants were transplanted, half a day had passed. Xuan wiped the non-existent sweat stains on his forehead, stretched his waist, and his bones crackled, and he felt relaxed all over. His spiritual sense swept over the mountain. After planting many spiritual plants, the mountain did not show any obvious changes, as if a river flowed into the sea. Everything seemed natural. I have never planted such a rich spiritual field. This made Xuan sigh. From the half-acre spiritual field in Linyang Market, to the small courtyard with more than an acre of spiritual field containing spiritual springs, to the cave in the Xianjian sect, although the area of the spiritual field has been expanding, it has always seemed a bit cramped and crowded due to the excessive number of spiritual plants. For the first time, I felt the vastness of the planting area. He released the grass puppet that had broken through to the 2nd level, flicked the grey grass tumor on its huge head, and said with a smile, "Your tasks will be much more difficult in the future. The mountain is larger and the terrain is complex. It will probably take a lot of time to patrol it. Do a good job, and I will reward you with spiritual stones." The grass puppet shook its head blankly, took slender steps, and began to familiarize itself with the environment of the mountain. Guard the spiritual field. With his mind focused, Xuan sensed the only thought in its huge head. The original spiritual field on the mountain is not very large. If you want to plant more spiritual plants, you must cultivate the spiritual field yourself. Xuan thought to himself, and checked all the newly planted spiritual plants to confirm that their growth was not affected during the transplant process. The only disadvantage of a large spiritual field is that the spiritual plants are planted to scattered, and it takes more time to travel. After carefully cultivating all the spiritual plants, Xuan couldn't help but sigh. But he could only do it himself, and couldn't ask the sect monks to help him plant the spiritual plants, because if his participation in the cultivation process was not enough, he might not be able to harvest the light ball reward. I don't know what effect it will have on the spiritual plants if I'll let my own spiritual beasts or puppets help me take care of them. Perhaps, when I reach the Giandan realm, I can refine something like an external incarnation, and then help me farm. That would be the best. With this still distant fantasy, he came to the small lake, and threw a handful of spiritual rice. The fat spiritual fish attracted to it scrambled to grab them, and Xuan learned detailed information about them. The spiritual fish were of average species, originally ordinary fish. After being placed in this lake with rich spiritual energy, they gradually became somewhat strange, but they were not yet of high quality. However, Xuan learned that the huge black turtle was a first-grade spiritual beast, with rich spiritual energy in its body, which was extremely nutritious. Keep it first, as a reserve food. The species was average, and there was no light ball reward, so Xuan directly decided their future fate. At the peak of the mountain, there was an elegant courtyard. Because no cultivator had lived there for a long time, it exuded a bit of decay. However, the overall situation was still intact. Xuan renovated it a little, checked it, and moved in directly. He made some preparations, and planned to invite a few familiar fellow disciples for a small celebration. Bailey Giant King, who had known each other before entering the sect and got along easily. Zhu Shadows, a neighbor in the cave before, who often sought opportunities in life and death trials. Huang Yuan, who had frequent exchanges in Qian Long Lake, and Yao King, who went out together to deal with the pests of the spiritual peaches in the water. He cast 4 communication talismans, explained the reason, and informed them of his current cave location. Key training disciples were generally not allowed to enter the inner sect, but it was different with an inner sect disciple personally inviting him. It was no problem for him to stay for a short time. The next day, Lu Xuan received the communication talisman early in the morning and used his new identity nameplate to pass through several magic arrays and came to the designated location. Brother Lu, Uncle Master. As soon as he appeared, Bailey Giant King squinted his eyes to greet him, with a warm smile on his face and a gesture of embrace. What the hell is that name? Lu Xuan pretended to kick him away. Just call me Brother Lu as usual. Yes, Brother Lu, no, Brother Lu. Bailey Giant King responded quickly. He didn't expect that Lu Xuan, who had joined the sect together before, had progressed so fast and had become an inner sect disciple. The difference in strength and status between the two suddenly became very large. However, with the understanding between the two, this did not affect his attitude towards Lu Xuan, but only strengthened his idea of holding on to this thigh tightly. Chapter 188, Fire Dragon Egg. Giant King, wait here for a while. I have also invited several fellow disciples I met before. Lu Xuan ordered. Bailey Giant King nodded, restrained his words and actions, and stood behind Lu Xuan and waited quietly. Not long after, a determined young man landed from a spiritual crane. It was Zhu Shadows, Lu Xuan's neighbor on the other side of the cave. Uncle Lu, congratulations on your promotion to the foundation building stage. Zhu Shadows smiled warmly from a distance and said loudly. Thank you, fellow Daoist Zhu. Considering their friendship, Lu Xuan did not address him as his nephew, but stood up to greet him. After a few pleasantries, the two fell into silence. Zhu Shadows stood behind Lu Xuan, looking at his tall figure, with a hint of envy in the corners of his eyes. Born as a casual cultivator, he often went in and out of danger to gain a little opportunity, fighting life and death with various monsters and evil spirits. When he met Lu Xuan, after getting to know him a little, he just regarded Lu Xuan as a fellow disciple, who was keen on spiritual plants, and not good at fighting. But he never expected that Lu Xuan would quietly break through to the foundation building realm, which shocked him greatly after receiving the news, and it took him a long time to calm down. He secretly adjusted his breathing, discarded the distracting thoughts in his heart, and determined his own path. While waiting, Yao King and Huan Yuan also arrived one after another, but what surprised Lu Xuan was that each of them was followed by a foundation building cultivator. Behind Yao King was the gentle female cultivator who cultivated the mutated burning Yuan wood. As for Huan Yuan, the foundation building cultivator he brought was the middle-aged scholar Yang Qingfeng who raised the mixed blood black-scaled dragon. Junior brother Lu, this is your fault. Why didn't you invite old acquaintances to such a big event as the breakthrough to the foundation building stage? It was Huang Yuan who told me about your big event, so I followed him to come and celebrate for you, junior brother. The middle-aged scholar said gently, and the gentle female cultivator beside him agreed with a smile. My fault, my fault. I will punish myself with 3 cups later. Senior brother Yang, senior sister He, please come into my humble room to have a look. Lu Xuan smiled. He led 2 mid-stage foundation building cultivators and 4 key training cultivators through several large formations and came to the mountain courtyard. The spiritual energy is rich, both inside and outside. Our beautiful junior brother has a good eye. The middle-aged scholar climbed all the way, looking at the scene on the roadside, and commented with a smile. The 6 people sat down in the outer hall, and Lu Xuan brought out preserved fruits and snacks to entertain them, and brewed 6 pots of boiling spiritual tea, each of which put a piece of pure spiritual tea leaves. We don't have anything good to offer at home, only a pot of inferior tea. Please taste it. Good tea. The middle-aged scholar put down the teapot in his hand, and a look of aftertaste appeared on his face. The source of this tea is unusual. It should be the 2nd grade King Neolingcha tea, which has the effect of calming the mind and resisting the invasion of evil spirits. You younger generations must digest it well, and don't waste it. Bailey Giant King and the other four heard the words and nodded in unison, carefully experiencing the pure and spiritual breath in the King Miolingcha tea. While tasting tea, they chatted about Lu Xuan's experience and feelings when he broke through the foundation. It was mainly Lu Xuan, the middle-aged scholar and the gentle female cultivator who were talking, and Huang Yuan and others occasionally echoed, respectfully, and did not dare to go beyond one step. Junior brother Lu, I came here in a hurry this time without any preparation. I heard that you have a strong interest in raising spiritual beasts, and have experience in raising dragons, so I brought you a dragon egg. This dragon egg was laid by a 3rd grade Lihuojiao. It can break out of the shell after a period of incubation. If it is raised properly, it can break through to the level of a 3rd grade spiritual beast. After chatting for a while, the middle-aged scholar Yang Qingfeng took out a giant egg from a grey-black cloth bag. The giant egg was oval, with the longest part exceeding 3 feet, and there were light red lines on the surface of the eggshell. Junior brother Yang, this gift is too expensive. Lu Xuan waved his hand to refuse. If it was an adult dragon, I would be reluctant to give it up, but this is just a dragon egg, and you still need to spend a lot of time and effort to cultivate it. At most, it will cost a few hundred spirit stones, which is nothing. He first met Lu Xuan because of the anorexia problem of the black-scaled dragon. After trying many methods, he listened to Huang Yuan's advice and invited Lu Xuan to come and help solve it. He didn't have much hope at first, but Lu Xuan gave him a big surprise. He used his key training to solve the anorexia of the 3rd grade black-scaled dragon. Now, the black-scaled dragon has returned to its normal form, and its strength has increased rapidly, slowly fulfilling the outstanding talents of its 2 excellent bloodlines. He knew that Lu Xuan was not good at fighting, but he judged that with Lu Xuan's attainments in spiritual plants and spiritual beasts, he could definitely get a good position in the sect, and have the ability to take charge of the sect's logistics, so he came up with the idea of getting to know him. The middle-aged Confucian scholar forced the dragon egg to Lu Xuan, and Lu Xuan couldn't refuse, so he had to accept it. His demand for adult dragons was smaller. Although he didn't need to spend a lot of time and resources to raise them, it also meant that there would be no light ball rewards, so it was better to start from the dragon egg. Junior brother Lu, this is the spiritual seed I condensed from a 3rd grade burning wood earlier. I gave it to you as a gift. Please don't dislike it. Thank you, senior sister He, such a rare spiritual seed, I'm ashamed to accept it. Lu Xuan hurriedly thanked. Huang Yuan and the others also took out their gifts. However, since Lu Xuan had already established his foundation, and they were only at the key training stage, the gifts were not too valuable. Lu Xuan personally cooked a large table of delicious dishes, and entertained the 6 people. The guests and hosts were all happy, and the 6 people left one after another. Lu Xuan cleaned up, and began to enter his new life as a spiritual plant master. He first untied the restraints on the young wind falcon and the cloud stepping lynx, allowing the 2 little ones to move freely in the mountain, instead of being confined to the narrow cave as before. He even promised that when their strength improved, they could move freely around the mountain without being restrained. With Lu Xuan's approval, the young wind falcon flapped its light blue wings, and flew freely in the air above the mountain. The speed was getting faster and faster, almost becoming a blue phantom, with the meaning of being caged for a long time, and soaring into the sky. The whole round belly slowly became streamlined during the rapid flight, trying its best to reduce the resistance of the body. With such a big belly, the young wind falcon lived up to its name as a flying spirit beast, with agility and lightness that was extremely inconsistent with its body shape. As for the stepping cloud lynx, it originally lived in the mountains and forests. After returning to nature, it ran fast among the trees and boulders, and its thick paws like white clouds landed silently. Compared with before, it was a little more wild. Lu Xuan placed the Lihuojiao long egg given by the middle-aged Confucian scholar on the spiritual vein node, and summoned the flying wind falcon young bird. I'll give you a task. From today on, spend 1 to 2 hours every day to hatch this giant long egg with your round belly. The young wind falcon stared with black eyes and nodded its little head gently. Lu Xuan patrolled the mountain peak, looking at the flowers and plants all over the mountain, thinking about what to do next. The most important thing is to go to the Sinan Palace to exchange spiritual seed resources for the foundation building realm. It would be best if I could get a few spiritual seed refining methods. Also, go to the Sutra library to choose a few suitable foundation building techniques, open up more spiritual fields, and if conditions permit, get a new formation. The second grade mist hiding formation is unlikely to cover such a large area. Chapter 189 Earth Fire Heart Lotus Moonlight Grass. Thank you for your hard work. Lu Xuan jumped down from the back of a tall spiritual crane, took out a red spiritual fruit, and stuffed it into its mouth. The spiritual crane pecked his palm gently, groped its head with white feathers a few times intimately, and then soared into the sky with a crisp cry. Lu Xuan walked into the main hall of the Sinning Hall with ease. He came to the old farmer monk he knew, and said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Zaya, I haven't seen you for a while. I'm here to exchange spiritual seeds again." The old farmer monk raised his head, his face wrinkled tightly, and glanced at Lu Xuan, instantly noticing the change in Lu Xuan's aura. His spiritual consciousness carefully scanned it, his face changed drastically, and he bowed his head and said respectfully, "Uncle Lu, you are here. Is there anything I can do for you?" "Fellow Daoist Zaya, you don't have to be so reserved. I came here this time to collect the cultivation resources after I was promoted to the foundation building stage," Lu Xuan said gently. He was a little helpless about the reaction of his old acquaintances after seeing him. He seemed to be much more unfamiliar, but he could still understand it. After all, the cultivation world is based on strength and has strict hierarchy. Once you break through to a new realm, it is impossible to go back to the past. Reporting to Uncle Master, if you want to apply for free spirit seeds or condensation methods in the foundation building stage, you need to enter the inner hall and register with your identity card to obtain them. The old farmer monk explained to Lu Xuan. "Then please take me to the inner hall." The old farmer monk nodded heavily and took Lu Xuan into the side door. "Uncle Lu, the inner hall is in front. It is not convenient for key training disciples to enter. I can only send you here." "Thank you, fellow Daoist Zaya." Lu Xuan thanked him and walked to the door of the inner hall. There was a ban at the door. He took out his identity card, shook it, and then entered it. The old farmer monk watched Lu Xuan disappear. His expression changed, and he sighed in his heart. The inner hall looked very ordinary from the outside, but it was a world of its own after entering. In the wide hall, there was a carpet made of high-level monster skins, and there were more than 10 potted plants with aura everywhere. The tables and chairs seemed to be made of several kinds of spiritual wood, with natural mysterious patterns on them. Everything looked simple and luxurious. In the huge inner hall, there were only 2 early foundation building monks on duty. No one entered except Lu Xuan. It was much quieter than the outer hall. This position seems to be suitable for slacking off. Lu Xuan sighed in his heart and came to one of the young monks. The young monk had an ordinary appearance and a restrained and steady temperament. When he saw Lu Xuan coming, he quickly stood up to greet him. "Hello, fellow Taoist, I'm Zhangse. I'm a little unfamiliar to you. Is this your first time in the inner hall?" "Hello, senior brother Zhang, I'm Lu Xuan. It is indeed my first time entering the inner hall," Lu Xuan replied. The two chatted for a while, and Lu Xuan told him the purpose of his visit. "Brother Zhang, I just broke through to the foundation building realm not long ago. I learned that, after becoming an inner sect disciple, I can obtain certain cultivation resources from the sect. Since I have a great interest in spiritual plants, I came to the Sinning Hall." "That's true. According to the sect's rules, in the early stage of foundation building, you can obtain a seedling or spiritual seed of a 4th grade spiritual plant, 3 3rd grade spiritual plants, and 10 2nd grade spiritual plants. The types are within the scope specified by the sect. In addition, you can also choose several methods of refining spiritual seeds. However, because the refining methods are much more precious than spiritual seeds and seedlings, you can only choose 1 method of refining 3rd grade and 3 methods of refining 2nd grade spiritual seeds. This is the benefit of inner sect disciples." Lu Xuan was so moved that he burst into tears. How many spirit stones and sword seals can be exchanged for the 4th grade spiritual seeds and the method of refining 3rd grade spiritual seeds? Seeing that he was silent, the young cultivator continued, "If Brother Lu breaks through to the middle stage of foundation building, he can also obtain the same number of spiritual seeds and spiritual seed refining methods. and so on. The same is true for the late stage of foundation building. Hiss. Xuan couldn't help but take a breath of cold air, and his sense of belonging to the sect was unprecedentedly strong. He tried to calm his thoughts and asked the young cultivator, "Brother Zhang, I have another question. Will these resources be effective in other cultivation skills?" Generally, they are limited to one of the categories. Junior brother Luke can refer to them and choose the cultivation resources he likes. For example, in terms of alchemy, junior brother can choose several recipes and some rare alchemy spirit medicines. The overall value is similar to that of spiritual plants. Most of the fellow disciples are only good at one type of cultivation skills, so they usually choose the corresponding cultivation resources. Slowly, this has developed into an unwritten rule. If junior brother wants to have resources for both spiritual plants and alchemy, it's not impossible, but it will be a lot of trouble. Xuan nodded to show his understanding. If alchemy, refining, array formations, talismans, puppet making and raising goo are all provided to foundation building cultivators with the same resources, it would be strange if the sect didn't go bankrupt. Brother Zhang, I have a special liking for spiritual plants. I have made up my mind and will not consider other types of resources. Please introduce me to the situation of spiritual plants. All the spiritual seeds that can be applied for are here. You can choose them yourself. Zhang Se took out a thick jade book. On the jade book, there were hundreds of spiritual plants recorded. The number of second grade spiritual plants was the largest and the number of fourth grade spiritual plants was the least. There were also many restrictions on the types. The second grade sword grass planted by Xuan on the mountain peak and the sword peacock taken out by the female cultivator he saw in the secret realm before were not among them. Xuan kept flipping through and comparing, and slowly made a decision. Brother Zhang, I want to apply for a 4th grade earth fire heart lotus spiritual seed. He pointed to a slowly rotating fiery red lotus and said to the young cultivator, the lotus rhizome is light red with dense and fine lines. At first glance, you would think that the rhizome is condensed by countless irregular light red crystals. The leaves are fiery red, and there is a faint flow of fiery red magma between the veins. After making a fortune from Qian Long Lake last time, Xuan had considered the Earth Fire Heart Lotus Spirit Seed, but because it could not meet the condition of being planted in hot magma, he had to choose the Black Insect Vine, which was also of the 4th grade. Now, there is a magma river inside the mountain, and the conditions are sufficient, suitable for planting this 4th grade Earth Fire Heart Lotus. Okay. The young monk glanced at it, and saw that the pattern of the Earth Fire Heart Lotus was lit on the jade book. He confirmed that there was a ready-made spirit seed and nodded. For the 3rd grade spirit seed, I will choose the same spirit seed, Yulin grass. Xuan flipped through the jade book, and pointed to one of the lit patterns. A spirit grass quietly appeared. The spirit grass was silvery white, as if a layer of light moonlight was pouring on it, revealing a hazy feeling. The note below the spirit grass said that the mature Yulin grass is extremely suitable for raising monsters and can accelerate the growth of monsters, which made Xuan very excited. Planting Yulin grass can get you light ball reward, and if you raise monsters, you can better hold on to the thigh of Xuanshan Bailuan, and you can also speed up the acquisition of light balls from other monsters you raise. It can be said that you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190. Eliminate the correct answer first. There were already many 3rd grade spiritual plants on the mountain. He valued Yulin grass more, so he chose Yulin grass for all 3 3rd grade spiritual seeds. As for the 2nd grade spiritual seeds, he thought for a while, and chose 2 spiritual seeds named Nishan grass and Rixiang fruit, 5 of each. He was not in a hurry to make a choice on the method of refining spiritual seeds. After all, only 4 kinds can be selected in the early stage of foundation building, so it is necessary to maximize their benefits. First of all, it is necessary to roughly figure out what kind of light ball rewards will be given after the selected spiritual plants mature. After planting so many spiritual plants, He also found out some rules. The light ball rewards of each spiritual plant are related to the species of the spiritual plant itself, and the number and type are usually limited to a few species. Therefore, it is necessary to select spiritual plants that can give practical rewards. Then use the method of refining spiritual seeds to plant on a large scale, and even improve its varieties to maximize the benefits. Soon, the young monk took out the spiritual seeds that Lu Xuan applied for, and handed them to Lu Xuan one by one. After Lu Xuan confirmed, the young monk registered the corresponding information under his watch, to avoid unnecessary disputes in the future. Thank you, senior brother Zhang, for this time. Lu Xuan clasped his fists, and thanked the young monk. It's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. Zhang Se replied with a smile. Lu Xuan achieved his goal, and came out of the inner hall of Sinan Hall without staying for long. When passing the outer hall, he said hello to the old farmer monk. The old farmer monk Zia Chen stared blankly at Lu Xuan's back as he walked away, not knowing what he was thinking. Fellow Daoist Zia, are you acquainted with the foundation building uncle just now? When he left, he came over to say hello to you. A monk not far away touched the old farmer monk with his arm and asked curiously. When the uncle was in the key training realm, he came to Sinan Hall several times to exchange spirit seeds, and I received him all the time. The old farmer monk did not hide it. That's a bit of a relationship. Maybe the uncle who builds the foundation will value you because of this. Judging from the uncle's face, he should be young. He can break through to the foundation building realm at such a young age. He has a bright future. The fellow disciples looked at the old farmer cultivator, and a trace of envy flashed in their eyes. Yes, breaking through to the foundation building realm at such a young age. The old farmer cultivator said in a daze. He remembered that, when he first met Lu Xuan, the other party was just a green and immature 9th level key training cultivator. Unexpectedly, in less than 3 years, he was promoted all the way to the foundation building realm. Even if he was about to break through to the perfection of key training at that time, this progress was extremely terrifying. Tell me, what factors affect a cultivator's ability to break through to the foundation building realm so quickly? Either a rare talent, or a rare adventure, or both, can break through to the foundation building realm in a short period of time. Hearing this, the old farmer cultivator shook his head imperceptibly. He had a certain understanding of Lu Xuan's cultivation talent. Among the many disciples of the Xianjian sect, he was definitely the lowest one. As for the adventure, as far as he knew, Lu Xuan basically stayed in the sect, cultivating spiritual plants, and it was unlikely that he would get a great opportunity for no reason. Could it be that cultivating spiritual plants can quickly improve cultivation? The old farmer monk said self-deprecatingly. He immediately shook his head, thinking that this idea was too absurd and ridiculous. He adjusted his mentality and secretly determined to catch up with Lu Xuan as soon as possible. Lu Xuan passed through layers of formations and returned to the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, the young wind falcon was lying in a haystack. Under its round belly, the light red lines on the surface of the Lihojiana long egg could be vaguely seen. With this huge thing under its belly, the fat on the belly of the young wind falcon spread out to both sides. Seeing Lu Xuan, it proudly let out a crisp cry, and Lu Xuan even saw a trace of maternal brilliance on its face. It has become an immature bird mother. Lu Xuan chuckled. Not far away, grey straw ropes continuously shot out from the huge tumor on the head of the straw puppet, circling around and expanding the hatching area of the wind falcon chicks. Ah! From somewhere came the roar of the cloud-stepping lynx. Lu Xuan looked in the direction of the sound, and saw a familiar black figure flying through the woods. Lu Xuan did not enter the house, but went directly to the place where the magma river passed. He used the earth drawing technique of the great success level to control the movement of the rocks, and a cave appeared in front of him. The spiritual consciousness spread along the cave, and after several turns, it came to the top of the magma river. The hot magma flowed slowly, with slight explosions from time to time. Drops of magma splashed on the rocks on both sides, leaving small shard holes. A fiery red lotus seed appeared in Lu Xuan's hand. The lotus seed was the size of a thumb tip, fiery red, and crimson smoke could be vaguely seen flowing inside. Sensing the hot magma below, the crimson smoke rolled endlessly, and seemed to become agitated in an instant. Lu Xuan's spiritual consciousness controlled the earth fire heart lotus spirit seed and placed it into the hot magma. The moment it was placed in the magma, the deep red smoke inside the lotus seed burst out, forming a slowly rotating virtual fire lotus. Under the nourishment of the magma, the fire lotus rotated faster and faster, and then turned into a stream of fiery red light, and drilled into the hot magma. A thought flashed through Lu Xuan's mind. Earth fire heart lotus, a 4th grade spiritual plant, needs to grow in hot magma, and be cultivated with 2nd grade or higher fire magic. After maturity, the lotus seeds can be swallowed to purify turbid and polluted auras, reduce the risk of alienation of cultivators, and resist the invasion and pollution of evil spirits for a certain period of time. Long-term use of earth fire heart lotus seeds can also increase spiritual consciousness. Lotus leaves and rhizomes can be used as materials for refining certain elixirs. Golden lotus grows in fire. It is indeed a 4th grade spiritual plant, full of treasures, especially the lotus seeds, which can resist the invasion and pollution of evil spirits for a certain period of time. If swallowed for a long time, it can even improve spiritual consciousness. Lu Xuan couldn't help but sigh. When cultivators go out to explore and adventure, the most fearful thing is to encounter evil spirits. Evil spirits are mysterious and have strange abilities. They are hard to guard against. If you are not careful, they will invade your body. The lotus seeds of the earth fire heart lotus can resist the invasion of evil spirits for a period of time after taking them, and can also purify the polluted spiritual energy in the body. For cultivators, it is a rare treasure. In addition, it is the first time he has encountered a spiritual plant that can increase spiritual consciousness. It is extremely difficult to increase spiritual consciousness, except when it breaks through. Only some rare natural treasures or high-grade refining techniques can have an increase effect. The lotus seeds of the earth fire heart lotus actually have such a magical effect. Although the premise is to swallow it for a long time, it is also precious. Lu Xuan felt that the surrounding environment was getting hotter and hotter. Without stopping, he came to a blank spiritual field and took out the Yulin grass spiritual seeds. The slender spiritual seed seemed to be covered with a layer of silver white moonlight, and the moonlight could be seen flowing as it swayed, revealing a sense of coolness and transcendence. Chapter 191 5 Element Escape Technique and 4 Seasons Sword Technique. The spiritual energy in his body surged, and the structure of the spiritual soil in front of him changed slightly under the control and guidance of the earth drawing technique. 3 long and thin cracks appeared, and Lu Xuan stuffed 3 Yulin grass spiritual seeds into the cracks. His mind was focused on the spiritual seeds in the shallow layer of the spiritual soil, and suddenly, a thought emerged from his mind. Yulin grass, a 3rd grade spiritual plant, can be used to feed monsters after maturity, which is of great benefit to the growth of monsters. It can also be used as a material for refining certain elixirs. It has a natural resistance to sunlight. During the day, the spiritual plant will condense the essence in its body to its roots and stems, making the spiritual plant in a semi-withered state. At night, the spiritual plant returns to normal and absorbs the spiritual power of the moon. When the spiritual power is sufficient, it will condense the moon spirit liquid, and the spirit liquid will dissipate on its own at dawn. Midnight is suitable for cultivating immortals. Another spiritual plant that doesn't like sunlight actually grows by absorbing the spiritual power of the moon. Lu Xuan was impressed by the diversity of spiritual plants. After the 2nd grade dark marrow and the 2nd grade yanhui that was still in the growth stage, another species that resisted sunlight appeared among the spiritual plants he planted. He looked up at the sky and used the wood growth technique of the Great Accomplishment Realm to control the grass and trees around the Yulin grass spiritual seed to grow towards the spiritual seed. After a period of time, it can serve as a natural barrier. After planting the 3rd grade Yulin grass, Lu Xuan randomly found an empty spiritual field, used the earth-inducing technique, and buried 5 seeds of the rainbow grass spiritual plant in the spiritual soil. A thought flashed through his mind, and information about the rainbow grass spiritual plant emerged. Rainbow grass, a 2nd grade spiritual plant. When mature, the leaves flutter softly, like the feathers of an immortal, dancing. When mature, it can be tanned into silk and used to weave robes and other magical instruments, with a natural lightening effect. Dancing and playing with clear shadows, it seems like Being in the human world, well, a dancing spiritual plant. Lu Xuan left a comment and continued to plant another 5 sun fragrance fruits. Sun fragrance fruit, a second grade spiritual plant, has its own fragrance when mature. After swallowing, it can make people's minds active and temporarily improve the monk's understanding. Like sunlight exposure, the stronger the light and the longer the exposure time, the longer the fragrance of the spiritual fruit lasts. Sun exposure, sun exposure, sun exposure for 10 days and a half. This is the first time I have encountered a spiritual plant that particularly likes sunlight exposure. Lu Xuan thought about it, took out 5 sun fragrance fruit spiritual seeds from the spiritual soil, and as light as a swallow, he leaped to the top of the mountain. This location has the highest terrain, and there are no other spiritual plants blocking it. The sunlight time is the longest, enough for you to sun it. He planted 5 sun fragrance fruit spiritual seeds on the flat top of the mountain and sighed softly. He patrolled the spiritual field, carefully examined all the spiritual plants, and performed various related spells to meet every subtle need of the spiritual plants. The next day, Lu Xuan got up early in the morning, covered in golden morning light, and patrolled the spiritual field as usual. Afterwards, he returned to the courtyard, ate a few spiritual fruits, sat in meditation for a while, told Xuan and the grass puppet to take good care of the house, and left the mountain. After being promoted to the foundation building stage, the spiritual seed resources have been obtained, and 3 skills and magics suitable for the foundation building stage can also be applied. Although he can obtain them from the light balls brought by various spiritual plants, he will not miss such a free opportunity. What's more, the Xuan sect is a well-known sect in the cultivation world, and the skills collected in the Sutra Pavilion are rarely seen in other places. With his identity nameplate, he successfully entered the 7th floor Sutra Pavilion. It was learned before that the 3rd and 4th floors were placed with various foundation building skills, magic, and strange arts, which could not be read by non-inner disciples. He climbed up along the stone stairs, passed through several layers of powerful restrictions, and came to the 3rd floor. There are many jade slips and jade books, ancient books, etc. on the wall. All the jade slips and jade books have special restrictions on the surface. Without the permission of the spiritual objects in the Sutra Pavilion, it is impossible to open and read the details of the skills, and only understand the general idea. Lu Xuan looked around the 3rd and 4th floors, weighed the pros and cons, and finally chose a cultivation method, a sword technique, and a light body technique. The method is called Big 5-element Gong, which is in the same vein as the small 5-element Gong he chose when he first entered the sect, and there is no need to waste time to cultivate spiritual power. The method is suitable for foundation building cultivators, and can be cultivated all the way to the done stage. The spiritual power cultivated is moderate and peaceful, and can be cultivated in various complex spiritual power environments. It also comes with several intermediate 5-element techniques, which are far more powerful and complex than the basic techniques Lu Xuan had mastered before. After planting more and more high-quality spiritual plants, sometimes the basic 5-element techniques are gradually stretched and cannot meet the needs of spiritual plants at one time. The intermediate techniques in Big 5-element Gong make up for this very well. In addition, it also contains the 5-element escape method, which can be freely shuttled in the special environment of the 5-element after mastering it. With Lu Xuan's cautious temperament, he is naturally very satisfied with this. The sword art is called 4-seasoned sword art, which contains a total of 4 sets of sword techniques, named after the 4 seasons, and contains different sword meanings. The spring rain sword art is continuous and insidious, the summer sword art is violent and manic, the autumn wind sword art is bleak and murderous, and the winter snow sword art is cold and piercing. The 4 sets of sword techniques have their own characteristics. 4-seasoned sword art has been practiced to a high depth, with countless changes. The 4 sword techniques can be switched freely, making the opponent defenseless. In addition to the unique characteristics of the sword art itself, Lu Xuan also considered its role in cultivating sword grass. The first sword grass is mainly cultivated with the Zhengjin sword art, and finally a mature sword grass of good quality is obtained. When the 2 sword grass currently planted in the spiritual field mature, Shenyi, the master of the Sinamhor who gave him the sword grass spirit seed, once promised him that, if the quality of the new 2 sword grass is normal, he will introduce him to a series of spiritual plants, based on sword grass. By then, it is very likely that he will come into contact with high-grade spiritual plants such as the sword peacock. Even if the Jingjin sword art has reached the master level, the first grade sword art is still not enough. Lu Xuan chose the 4-seasoned sword art which contained many changes, and he also took these factors into consideration. The light body technique was called the floating light technique, which was of the 3rd grade. After practicing it successfully, it was like a fleeting light when it was performed, and it was extremely fast. After he made his choice, his spiritual consciousness probed into the brilliant galaxy on the top of the Sutra library. Then, the light spots that were slowly moving in the galaxy poured down and landed on the 3 jade slips in Lu Xuan's hands. The restrictions on the jade slips were like warm sun melting snow, and they melted rapidly. Now all aspects are developed in a balanced manner. For attack, there is a Zunlei sword pill in the Danshan, plus the newly acquired 4-seasoned sword art and the 5-element intermediate magic. For defense, there is the powerful body obtained from Taixu Hualangpian and Liulidu and Gugong. As for evil spirits, there is the immaculate jade, so ordinary evil spirits cannot get close to me. In addition, there is also a substitute evil baby that can block fatal blows. As for concealment and escape, there is the 3rd grade hidden spirit cloak that can conceal the body, the 5-element escape technique, and the floating light technique. It can be said to be well-rounded development. Of course, the greatest advantage is still in the field of farming. Lu Xuan said with emotion. Chapter 192 White Jade Sky Supporting Ape. In the mountain courtyard, Lu Xuan took out 3 jade slips, put one of them against his forehead, and slowly let his spiritual consciousness seep into it. Soon, a surging stream of information rushed into his mind, filling up his sea of consciousness and almost exploding. He was like a sponge, madly absorbing the cultivation knowledge that poured into his sea of consciousness and digesting it continuously. After nearly half an hour, Lu Xuan exhaled a breath of turbid air, and his expression was much more relaxed. In his sea of consciousness, the cultivation methods, tricks, roots, and the use of intermediate 5-element spells of the big 5-element kung fu were deeply engraved. With a thought, he could summon the corresponding knowledge and experience it carefully. It is worthy of being an advanced version of the small 5-element kung fu. The difficulty of cultivation is several times higher. Of course, the effect is also much improved. Lu Xuan sighed and followed the same method to absorb the sword tactics and light body skills in the other 2 jade slips. After the knowledge in the jade slips was absorbed, it automatically shattered and turned into powder and fell to the ground without worrying about it being easily spread out. After being promoted to the foundation building stage, farming is still the most important thing. However, in my spare time, I can still practice some skills and sword techniques. He sighed secretly. Other cultivators focus on cultivation, followed by fighting, exploring opportunities, refining pills, refining equipment, and spiritual plants. Lu Xuan is just the opposite. In front of cultivating spiritual plants, others are just chickens and pottery dogs, fragile. After learning a little about the 3 skills, he came to the spiritual field. He crossed the mountains and observed the growth of many spiritual plants in various parts of the mountain. All the spiritual plants are growing well. Some have entered the mature stage one after another, some have branches and leaves, and are growing vigorously, and some have taken root and sprouted, or are in the gestation stage. Each stage is full of vitality, which makes Lu Xuan, a spiritual plant master, feel extremely satisfied. A batch of spiritual firefly grass has also matured. He checked the remaining ordinary spiritual firefly grass, and after carefully confirming each one, he got 32 perfectly mature spiritual firefly grasses. Due to the influence of the recent transplantation, the average quality of the newly matured firefly grass has slightly dropped. Among the 32 plants, only 4 are of perfect quality, and the others are of good or superior quality. On the ground, at the location where they were picked, 32 white light balls flickered slightly, attracting Lu Xuan's attention. He raised the corners of his mouth and gently picked up the nearest one. the light bowl turned into countless light points and poured into his body. Then, a thought flashed through his mind. Harvest 1 firefly grass and gain 2 months of cultivation. How? Just as Lu Xuan wanted to continue to pick up the second light ball, suddenly, a thought appeared in his mind and attracted his attention. 2 months of cultivation? How could this happen? A trace of panic flashed in his eyes. In his impression, the white light ball just now came from a good quality firefly grass. According to the past, he would get a 6-month cultivation reward, but this time, he only got 2 months of cultivation. Lu Xuan adjusted his breathing and continued to pick up the second light ball. It was not until the 5th light ball that the cultivation reward appeared. It came from a high quality spiritual firefly grass. It should have given him 9 months of cultivation, but after absorbing the light ball, he only gained 3 months of cultivation. Compared with the past, the cultivation reward brought by the light ball is 2/3 less. What is the reason? The picking time and the quality of the spiritual plants are no different from before. On the contrary, the spiritual energy and spiritual soil on the mountain are better than the previous cave. The only change is that I have been promoted to the foundation building realm. Could it be that the gap in grades is too large, resulting in a reduction in cultivation rewards? Lu Xuan suddenly had an idea and thought of some games in his previous life. When the controlled character killed monsters, if the level difference was too large, the experience gained would be reduced or even zero. Spirit firefly grass is a spiritual plant without grade, and the foundation building cultivation corresponds to a 3rd or 4th grade spiritual plant. There is indeed a huge gap. The more Lu Xuan thought about it, the more he felt that this possibility was the greatest. He also thought of another situation. Harvesting low-grade spiritual plants will reduce the rewards, so will harvesting high-grade spiritual plants across levels get more generous rewards. When he was in the key training realm, he harvested 2 3rd-grade spiritual plants, Gyoteng and Xuan and Luogo, and obtained the top-grade body training technique Taixu Hualangpian and the 4th-grade formation Kaian Huan Yunnan formation respectively. In the past, I occasionally got higher grade rewards, but they were mainly talismans or materials, which were less important than techniques and formations. Therefore, cross-level cultivation of spiritual plants does have extra rewards. Lu Xuan analyzed. Fortunately, I prepared for a rainy day and had already made preparations. I experimented in advance and improved the variety of Lingyiang grass. Lu Xuan calmed down and looked at the remaining Lingyiang grass and decided to make some adjustments. He did not intend to pick the remaining 134 ordinary Lingyiang grasses, but planned to condense them all into spiritual seeds, and then use a large number of spiritual seeds to induce mutated spiritual plants. With the 26 ice and fire spirit fireflies that have been successfully induced, and the 50 plants that are in the stimulation stage, with a large amount of resources poured in, he firmly believes that he will soon succeed in the improvement. In the process of improvement, my biggest advantage is that I can cycle and induce spirit seeds. I don't need to cultivate for a period of time to find abnormalities. I can know the information directly after planting the spirit seeds, which greatly shortens the induction process. In addition, for the mutated spirit plants, I can make the most accurate adjustments and choices based on its immediate state, which can also save a lot of time. Lu Xuan thought confidently. After being scared for a while, let's have a grilled fish to calm down. He came to the edge of the lake, and a red light silently penetrated the lake surface. After 2 or 3 breaths, a fat spirit fish jumped out of the water with a red thread needle. The spirit fish fell to the ground, flapping its tail fiercely, trying to return to the lake. Lu Xuan casually pulled out a gray straw rope from the grass puppet next to him, tied the spirit fish, and carried it back to the courtyard. Under the slow fire, the spiritual fish made a sizzling sound, and the fragrance spread, attracting the Fengshuan chicks incubating the Lihuojian long eggs and the treading cloudlinks in the forest. Lu Xuan turned it over and sprinkled the boiled monster oil, spices, and seasonings, making the fragrance more intense. The Fengshuan chick's belly contracted and expanded nervously, and the treading cloudlinks pretended to be indifferent and walked around beside it, but its green eyes never left the grilled fish. Come on, freshly baked fish. Several silver white fragments flew out, cutting the grilled fish into more than 10 portions. Lu Xuan threw one portion to the second child and grabbed a large portion for himself, devouring it. Crack. A familiar cry came, and a white phoenix appeared in the courtyard. Lu Xuan looked at the majestic and elegant Xuan Bailuan, and a smile flashed in his eyes. I haven't told you since I moved, but you come to my house by yourself, you greedy guy. Oh, you brought a friend with you? Lu Xuan was pleasantly surprised. A small and exquisite monkey walked out slowly, following closely behind the phoenix, glancing at Lu Xuan and the fragrant grilled fish in front of him from time to time. Come, try the new dishes. Lu Xuan tore off 2 pieces of fish and threw them to the phoenix and the little monkey respectively. His mind was focused on the monkey, and a thought flashed through his mind. White Jade Sky King Ape, a 3rd grade monster beast, the guardian beast of the Xianjian sect. It contains the blood of the ancient monster Sky King Ape, and has the potential to grow into a 7th grade monster beast. It is fierce and aggressive by nature, violent and irritable, and its strength is greatly improved after entering the frenzy state. I want this day to be able to cover my eyes no longer. Right square bracket. Chapter 193, Beastmaster. Another potential new fire, the 7th rank. Lu Xuan looked at the white jade monkey who was tasting the roasted fish, and the warmest and most sincere smile appeared on his face. Is that enough? If not, here is more, he said softly to the white jade monkey. The stepping cloud lynx, who was eating fish at the side, heard the voice, raised his head, and looked at Lu Xuan with confused green eyes. It seemed to have felt a familiar pinch just now. What greeted it was Lu Xuan's fierce glare. The white jade monkey was very intelligent, and its eyes like crystal red jade looked at Lu Xuan. After getting his confirmation, it came to the roasted fish that exuded a rich aroma. Lu Xuan cut off a piece with the silver blade and handed it to the white jade monkey. The monkey took it with both hands, lowered his head, and slowly walked behind Xuan Bailuan to taste the food carefully. So good, Lu Xuan praised. Such a well-behaved and sensible, shy, and timid, totally different from the fierce, aggressive, violent, and irritable one in the information. He couldn't help but feel a little confused. Not far away, Xuan Bailuan walked gracefully and came to Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan saw a trace of desire in its black and white eyes, cut off a piece of grilled fish, and threw it to the phoenix. You are quite loyal, little thing. I told you last time, and this time you really brought a companion, Lu Xuan said with a smile. After all the grilled fish was eaten, he took out a piece of crab paste from the storage bag as a snack. He cut it horizontally and vertically, and gave a piece to Xuan, the phoenix, and the white jade monkey. I don't know how the sect raises a guardian spirit beasts, whether they are free range, or have cultivators take care of them. However, even if there are cultivators who take care of them, they will probably only use specific spirit fruits or raw materials from monsters to raise them. Unlike me, there are various cooking methods for monster meat: braising, steaming, frying, and roasting. There are many ways. In addition, there are spirit fruits of various flavors and special treasures obtained from the light ball. After such a series of tricks, they must be fascinated and infatuated. Lu Xuan looked at the 2 guardian spirit beasts who were enjoying the crab spirit paste bit by bit, and thought proudly. Ordinary fellow disciples usually choose cultivators with deep backgrounds and strong strength as their thighs, and try their best to curry favor with them, but the results are very limited, and they may even get nothing. Unlike me, I took a different approach, and noticed the potential of the spirit beast early. When it was the weakest and most innocent, I used various delicacies to capture its stomach and build a deep relationship from an early age. Easy, simple, and effective, Lu Xuan thought happily. After eating the crab spirit paste, Xuan Bailuan and Baiyu King Ape walked up to Lu Xuan and thanked him. Then, Xuan Bailuan turned into a stream of light that changed from real to fake, and passed through the misty formation. When Lu Xuan saw the white jade monkey grabbing 3 white hairs on its head, and was about to open the formation to let it go, the monkey's eyes like crystal red jade flashed a trace of red light, and then it crashed directly into the thick white fog, leaving a hole that was 70% similar to its body. So simple and crude. Lu Xuan checked the formation plate and found that, although it was violently broken, the formation plate was strangely not damaged much, as if the formation had not reacted when the white jade king snake rushed out. After a while, the hole left by the white jade monkey had been automatically eliminated by the thick white fog, as if it had never happened. Lu Xuan cleaned up the yard and returned to the house. When he was about to practice, he caught a glimpse of the Xuan sword sheath in the corner, which was inserted by the second grade red flame sword. It has been inserted for so long, I don't know how well the red flame sword has been moistened by the scabbard. The thought emerged in his mind. He grabbed the Xuan scabbard, held the red hilt of the red flame sword, and slowly pulled it out. A clanging sound of sword rang out. The rich spiritual energy turned into fiery red magma, which continued to flow out as the sword body was pulled out, and it lingered in the low air for a long time. The Xuan scabbard trembled slightly, as if it was a little uncomfortable with the sudden withdrawal of the big iron rod that had been in the body. Lu Xuan carefully examined the second grade red flame sword in his hand. Compared with when it was first put into the scabbard, the red sword body exuded a clear spiritual light after such a long time of tempering, and the fiery red lines on it became more dense and complex, flowing faintly. He controlled the red flame sword with his spiritual consciousness, and with a thought, the red flame sword turned into a fiery red stream of light, passed through a huge stone, and the whole was charred black, showing its terrifying burning power. The quenching effect is really good. Keep inserting it to grow it. Lu Xuan was satisfied and aimed the tip of the sword at the crack of the Xuan sword sheath. He ignored the rejection of the sword sheath and simply and roughly inserted the whole sword body into it. Sure enough, after the first experience, the second entry will be much easier. He looked at the ancient sword sheath that completely wrapped the red flame sword and thought to himself. In the next period of time, he spent most of his time cultivating spiritual plants and cultivating spiritual fields. Planting many new varieties of spiritual plants on the mountain peaks consumed more of his energy. Fortunately, after being promoted to the foundation building stage, his spiritual power was sufficient to cope with these numbers of spiritual plants. In his spare time, he practiced several new techniques. Due to his ordinary qualifications, the progress was slow, but Lu Xuan did not feel much anxiety in his heart. It would be best if the practice was successful, but it didn't matter if the practice failed. Anyway, he could get various rewards from the spiritual plant light group, which was not inferior to the sect's techniques. On this day, when he was cultivating spiritual plants, suddenly, a familiar clear voice came from outside the yard. "Junior brother Lu, are you home?" "Senior brother Yang, I'm here." Lu Xuan's figure was like a wisp of white smoke, floating quickly to the foot of the mountain, controlling the formation, and the thick fog dissipated, revealing a figure. It was the middle-aged scholar who helped solve the dyad problem of the Emol and Gio during the key training stage. When Lu Xuan just broke through, he generously gave him a Liho long egg. "Junior brother Lu, I haven't seen you for a while. Your cultivation has stabilized a lot. Senior brother, you are too kind. I have been staying on the mountain and practicing hard for a while. This is just a little bit of results," Lu Xuan said casually. Although the Lingi and grass he picked before gave him less experience due to the huge difference in grades, it still brought him nearly 2.5 years of cultivation, allowing him to completely stabilize his realm in the early stage of foundation building. "How is the Gianna long egg hatching?" The middle-aged scholar followed Lu Xuan and asked with a smile. "Everything is going well. It will probably hatch soon." "That's good. Junior brother Lu, I came here this time to ask for something. A good friend of mine in the sect has recently encountered a problem with the spirit beast. He has a pair of rare ancient beasts, twins in one body, and now they have reached the breeding stage. However, because the breeding conditions of the beasts cannot be met, he has been unable to find a solution for a long time. He has tried many ways but failed. I think junior brother Lu has a unique ability in this regard, so I want to invite you to try." "Okay, it's another spirit beast breeding problem. I have become a master of beast science." Lu Xuan sighed secretly. After solving the problem of the reduced fertility rate of the spirit cranes in the beast taming hall, the problem of the inability to breed special beasts has arisen. Moreover, judging from the tone and demeanor of the middle-aged scholar Yang Qingfeng, there must be something unusual behind this problem. Chapter 194 The Yin Yang Kun Fish That Never Intersect. Brother, can you tell me more about the specific information about the spirit beast problem? Lu Xuan asked. Of course. The fellow disciple who possessed the pair of ancient beasts is named Jepu, who is in the late stage of foundation building. He entered the sect with me and experienced a lot together, so we have a certain friendship. However, his talent and aptitude are much better than mine. He is now one of the 17 true disciples of the sect. True disciples? Lu Xuan was a little surprised. That's right. After becoming an inner disciple, the sect's giant and elders will select the most outstanding group of talents and aptitudes, and after several rounds of evaluation, a certain number of true disciples will be selected. Each true disciple can obtain a large amount of cultivation resources, and with their talents and aptitudes, they can be said to be in the reserve for Jinden. The middle-aged scholar saw Lu Xuan's puzzled expression and explained. Lu Xuan nodded, indicating that he understood. With his talent and aptitude, he probably didn't even qualify for the first round of selection, so he naturally wouldn't dream of that. Even if his cultivation level improved rapidly, in the eyes of others, his potential was far lower than those gifted people. However, he didn't care about it. After all, he already had the magical plug-in of the light ball reward, so it didn't matter whether he had the identity of a true disciple or not. The pair of strange beasts raised by senior brother Jepu are extremely rare. They are relics of ancient times, and even many cultivators have never heard of them. Now the pair of strange beasts are facing a critical moment of pregnancy. I see that junior brother Lu has a unique ability in raising spiritual beasts, so I want to invite you to try it. Lu Xuan once helped him easily solve the eating problem of the black-scaled dragon that had troubled him for a long time. In addition, he had heard that Lu Xuan helped greatly improve the fertility rate of the spiritual cranes in the beast taming hall. Therefore, he had some expectations for Lu Xuan in his heart. Okay, then I'll give it a try, but I dare not say that I can solve it smoothly. I'll do my best. It's naturally a great joy to be able to solve it, but it doesn't matter if it can't. The middle-aged scholar nodded. Lu Xuan followed him and flew rapidly among the peaks. After a while, he came to a strange mountain. The two passed through the mountain protection array and entered it. Lu Xuan looked around. The mountain was extremely simple, with only black and white tones. Even the spiritual plants could not see the emerald green color that represented vitality. The inside of the mountain was hollow, and a water ball of several hundred feet was floating. Half of the water ball was dark black, and the other half was light white. They kept impacting each other and trying to merge into each other, but they were clearly separated. At first glance, it looked like a take-eye pattern. Inside the huge water ball, there were two giant fish, more than 20 feet long, one black and 100, each flowing freely in the water bowl of the corresponding color. Below, sat a handsome monk, wearing a white shirt and a head full of white hair. He had an extraordinary temperament, like a banished immortal. A pair of pupils were particularly eye-catching, one dark and deep, and the other pale and indifferent. Seeing the two middle-aged Confucian scholars coming over, the handsome monk stood up to greet them. This is brother Jepu, senior brother. This is junior brother Lu Xuan, who has extraordinary attainments in the field of spirit beasts. I'm here to see if I can help you solve the problem of the ancient beasts. Hello, senior brother Jen. Lu Xuan bowed respectfully. The black and white pupil cultivator in front of him had a much higher cultivation level than him. With the status of a true disciple, he could be said to have half a foot in the Jinden realm. He dared not slack off. Junior brother Lu, I've heard King Feng talk about you more than once. I'm going to trouble you again this time, to help me with the problem of my pair of spirit beasts. Junior brother will do his best. Lu Xuan bowed his head and said. He and the middle-aged scholar followed the handsome Jepu, and came to the bottom of the water bowl. This black and white water ball is a magical tool specially refined for the purpose of creating a growth environment suitable for this pair of yin and yang kun fish. This pair of yin and yang kun fish are exotic beasts left over from ancient times, born from the yin and yang of heaven and earth. I found them in a blessed land. Because of the special practice, I have been raising them to assist in the comprehension of yin and yang Taoism. The breeding method of this pair of yin and yang kun fish is quite special. Under certain specific conditions, yin and yang meet to produce a pair of offspring. The offspring also have yin and yang attributes, and they respectively parasitize in the bodies of their ancestors with the same attributes, absorbing and devouring their nutrients to continuously grow themselves. Eventually, the big black and white fish dissipates, and the small fish becomes a new yin and yang kun fish. This breeding method is somewhat similar to nirvana rebirth. After each breeding, it will be much stronger than the previous one. This cycle continues, and after multiple breedings, its strength will become extremely terrifying. Of course, the conditions that need to be met in each round of breeding become more and more stringent. If the requirements are not met, the situation of the two yin and yang kun fish in my hand will appear. After the handsome monk Jepu finished speaking, he thought about it, and two giant black and white fish jumped out of the water bowl and swam towards each other happily in the air. The distance between the two was getting closer and closer, but after a long time, they still couldn't make actual contact. In the end, the two big fish swam in a circle, the black head chasing the white tail, the white head chasing the black tail. The head was big and the tail was thin. At first glance, it looked like a rotating Teikai pattern. It seemed to be intertwined, but it seemed as if there were thousands of stars between them, and they couldn't touch each other no matter what. It's like being close yet far away. The yin and yang kun fish are twins, attracting each other, but repelling each other. Unless the surrounding environment meets its requirements, the yin and yang fish will reproduce. Otherwise, this situation will occur. Although they want to mate and conceive, they can't touch each other no matter what. Jepu, who has black and white pupils, explained to Lu Xuan and the middle-aged Confucian scholar. Has Brother Je ever used any methods? Lu Xuan asked curiously. At the beginning, when the breeding conditions were easy to meet, I would directly create a suitable environment, let them reproduce naturally, and then regenerate into a new generation of yin-yang kun fish. But when their strength grew to the level of a 4th grade demon beast, the requirements for the breeding environment became higher and higher. The last time, I tried everything but couldn't satisfy them. Some time ago, I even had the idea of forcing them to mate, but with my cultivation level, after several experiments, I still couldn't let them mate naturally. If extreme violence is used, it may be feasible, but I'm worried that it will damage the new kun fish in the breeding stage, so I finally gave up. I wonder what junior brother Lu thinks after seeing this. Jepu turned his head and looked at Lu Xuan with a hint of expectation in his black and white pupils. The middle-aged scholar told him about Lu Xuan's solution to the problem of the black-scaled dragon's diet. After hearing this, he inexplicably had more confidence in Lu Xuan. Senior brother Jet, could you give me some of the food I usually use to feed the yin-yang kun fish? I'll feed them some to increase the affection between them and lay a foundation for subsequent inspections. Lu Xuan said slowly. After completing the feeding procedure, he will be able to make a good decision after gaining and understanding more information. Chapter 195 In Vitro Cunescence. Hearing this, Jepu spread out his palms, and two pills with rich and pure spiritual power appeared in his palms. One black and one white. There was a faint white gas lingering on the black pill, and black gas could also be vaguely seen swimming on the white pill. These are the pills I usually use to feed this pair of yin-yang kun fish. The black pill feeds the yin kun, and the white pill feeds the yang kun. The two black and white pills floated in front of Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan gently pinched them, and the spiritual energy under his feet surged, shooting like a sharp arrow in front of the yin-yang kun fish that looked like a Teikai pattern. He threw the two pills into the mouths of the black and white kun fish respectively. His mind was focused on the yin-yang kun fish, and a thought flashed through his mind. Yin-yang kun fish, an ancient strange beast, twins in one body, a 4th grade demon beast, in the growth period, born with yin and yang energy, and proficient in various yin-yang magic. It has reached the stage of breeding and reproduction, but it is unable to meet the breeding conditions. Why is it so difficult to send out cunescence? The last sentence of the thought seemed to carry a strong sense of regret and depression. Lu Xuan sensed from the yin-yang kun fish that they were extremely eager to have sex. It was not just to satisfy their own desires, but more to continue their lives. But they did not reveal how to help them breed. Lu Xuan pretended to explore the huge black and white body of the yin-yang kun fish, and he was in a dilemma. He had a better understanding of this pair of ancient beasts, but he was still at a loss as to how to quickly let them enter the natural reproduction state. Brother Jepu, as a true disciple of the sect, and a late foundation building cultivator, must have sought help from many fellow disciples with high cultivation, and spent a lot of cultivation resources. If you really can't think of a solution, you may be disappointed, but you shouldn't blame an inner disciple who has just been promoted to the foundation building stage. Thinking of this, he felt a lot more relaxed. While circling around the huge black and white body of the yin-yang cunfish, he was thinking about a solution. Although he was not worried about his life, no matter what the result was, he still wanted to try his best to solve this problem. Senior Brother Jez's usual approach is to try his best to create an aura environment where yin and yang merge. However, as the yin-yang cunfish grows larger and its grade gets higher, the requirements for the aura environment are also constantly increasing, until now it has reached a point where it cannot be satisfied. But is it possible to change our thinking? For example, in vitro fertilization, the more Lu Xuan thought about it, the more he felt that it was feasible. It is hard to imagine how difficult it is to create a large and complete aura environment where yin and yang meet, but as far as I know, yin and yang can be converted to each other to a certain extent. Then, can we create a unilateral yin or yang environment? For example, convert white yang energy into black yin energy, simulate the aura environment required by yin kun, communicate with it, and give birth to kun essence. Then, use the same method to let yang kun give birth to kun essence, combine yin and yang kun essence in vitro, and then send it into the body of yin and yang kun fish. There are two factors that must be considered here. One is whether yin and yang kun fish are willing to use this method. However, from their information, we can know that their need to reproduce is far stronger than their own desires. The other is whether Senior Brother Jepu accepts this method of breeding, and whether it can simulate a unilateral aura environment. Lu Xuan thought for a while in his mind, and landed on the ground. Junior Brother Lu, how are the results of the examination? Do you have any inspiration? As soon as he landed, the handsome monk looked at Lu Xuan with black and white pupils, and asked in a deep voice, I did think of a way, but it is a bit unorthodox. Lu Xuan said hesitantly, just tell me, junior brother. If I think it's feasible, I will give it a try. The result has nothing to do with you. Jepu had tried various methods long ago, but all ended in failure. Hearing Lu Xuan's words, he immediately had more expectations. I have a small suggestion. Maybe we can change our thinking, and simply simulate the spiritual environment of yin or yang to let the cunfish give birth to kun essence. Lu Xuan slowly stated his idea. In vitro combination. Junior Brother Lu, you have a really wonderful idea. The spiritual patterns in Jepu's black and white pupils were like ripples, and he said to Lu Xuan with a somewhat excited tone. That's true. We were all imprisoned by the traditional breeding methods before, and we only thought about how to meet the breeding conditions of yin and yang cunfish, and we didn't consider the situation of in vitro combination at all. The middle-aged scholar next to him was also full of admiration, and was impressed by Lu Xuan's strange idea. Jepu calmed down, and weighed the pros and cons in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that Lu Xuan's suggestion was extremely feasible. In this way, the two big fish will only consume some kun essence at most, and the damage to the main body will not be great. Even if it fails, it only needs to make up for the loss. It is safer than my previous method. He made up his mind, and floated into the air, to communicate with the black and white giant fish that were still spinning around each other. Immediately, a black light shot out from his black pupils, and entered the white part of the black and white water ball in the air. Half of the light white water ball suddenly set off a lot of waves, and the dark black water ball adjacent to it was frantically washed and assimilated. Soon, most of the light white water ball turned into black gas, and merged into the dark black water ball. Not far away, the white cunfish looked at his residents collapsing like this, and let out a long wail. The sound was shrill and sad, which made Lu Xuan on the ground feel sympathetic. Hey, Kun, the house collapsed. He sighed softly, and continued to look at Jepu in the air. Jepu had already communicated with a pair of yin and yang cunfish. After the huge dark black water ball was formed, the black cunfish looked at its companion, stretched out its huge fin, comforted its companion through a barrier, and jumped into the huge dark black water ball with the belief of continuing life. The thick black gas spread wildly, condensed in the belly of the black cunfish and slowly formed a deep black ball the size of a fist. This is the cunessence of the black cunfish. Lu Xuan watched with interest as Jeppu condensed a light white water ball and wrapped the deep black ball inside. Then, the aura of the huge dark black water ball continued to change, and the light white aura became more and more, until a new yang water ball was formed. Jeppu followed the same method, guiding the white cunfish into the light white water ball, simulating the yang aura environment, and breeding the corresponding cunessence. The two groups of cunessence, one black and one white, merged together, and the yin and yang key kept changing, and finally formed a pair of exquisite black and white cunfish. The two small cunfish looked a little weak, and their exposed bodies had a tendency to dissipate. Seeing this, Jeppu quickly put the two black and white cunfish into the big fish. The two small cunfish swam happily in the big fish with corresponding attributes, absorbing nutrients from the big fish. Seeing this, Lu Xuan couldn't help but feel emotional. The old cunfish is about to perish, and the new cunfish will be reborn in a more powerful way. The spirit of Kun will be passed down from generation to generation. Chapter 196 Sword Order. Congratulations to senior brother Jeff for obtaining a pair of small Kun. When the black and white pupil monk fell back to the ground, Lu Xuan and the middle-aged Confucian scholar came forward together and clasped their fists to congratulate him. Thank you, two junior brothers, especially junior brother Lu, for your advice and wonderful ideas, which have made great contributions and solved a big problem for me. Jeppu raised the corners of his mouth and said with a smile, the newly born yin yang cunfish will parasitize the body of the big fish, absorb the nutrients of the big fish to grow, and when it reaches a certain stage, it will even devour the yin yang key in the body of the big fish, and finally replace it, and grow into a new pair of yin yang cunfish. He looked at the two pairs of yin yang cunfish with huge differences in size in the air, and said to Lu Xuan and the others, if they continue to multiply from generation to generation, the yin yang ki accumulated in the body of the yin yang cunfish will increase, and their strength will become stronger and stronger. Jeppu welcomed Lu Xuan and the others into a pavilion, surrounded by black and white ki, and brewed a pot of spiritual tea. After practicing for so long, even my brain doesn't know how to adapt. Fortunately, I met junior brother Lu today. With such a wonderful idea, he cleverly solved the problem of the yin-yang cunfish breeding. Jeppu raised the teacup in his hand towards Lu Xuan to show his gratitude. This time, Lu Xuan not only helped him solve the current problem that had troubled him for a long time, but also provided him with a wonderful idea. According to this idea, once the yin-yang cunfish is bred in the future, a new cunfish can be born through in vitro fusion. In this way, the requirements for breeding conditions are reduced by more than half, and he even has the confidence to push the yin-yang cunfish to the 5th level. You know, he is currently only in the late stage of foundation building, and it is a long way to go before he breaks through to the Giandan realm. If the spirit beast he raises breaks through to the 5th level first, it can be a great help to him, and he can even comprehend the extremely powerful yin-yang magic. Thinking of this, he felt more and more happy, and looked at Lu Xuan next to him with particular favor. Junior brother Lu, you helped me solve a big problem today. I must reward you well. I wonder if you have any treasures you like. I'm quite wealthy, whether it is elixirs, talismans, magic tools, etc. I have corresponding items suitable for cultivators in the early stage of foundation building. He stared at Lu Xuan with his black and white pupils, and said sincerely. Lu Xuan did not pretend to refuse. After thinking for a while, he said, senior brother, then I won't be polite. I like to deal with spiritual plants and spiritual beasts by nature. I don't have much interest in elixirs, magic tools, talismans, etc. If you have any spiritual seeds, spiritual beast eggs, or spiritual beast fetuses, it would be the best. Haha, junior brother Lu, it would be better if you are more straightforward. Seeing Lu Xuan like this, Jeppu laughed loudly, and then restrained his smile. However, junior brother, your request is a little difficult for me. I rarely cultivate spiritual plants, and the only spiritual beasts I have are this pair of yin-yang cunfish that are closely related to the cultivation method I practice. Therefore, I don't have any rare spiritual seeds, spiritual beast eggs, or spiritual beast fetuses. However, I can give you a sword order. With this order, you can enter the blessed land belonging to the sect. The blessed land is rich in resources, and there are all kinds of rare spiritual plants and spiritual beasts everywhere. Junior brother can get them by himself. Jepu laughed and took out a token from the storage bag. At first glance, the token looked like a sword blade, made of bronze, with one or more sword shadows passing by from time to time. Sword order? Jepu didn't have a suitable spiritual seed or spiritual beast in his hand, which made Lu Xuan a little disappointed. Looking at the sword-shaped token in his hand, he looked puzzled. Junior brother Lu, the sword token is a rare item. I suggest you accept it, so as not to regret it in the future. A voice as thin as a mosquito's whistle sounded in Lu Xuan's ears. Lu Xuan glanced at the middle-aged scholar beside him. He was just leisurely drinking the spiritual tea in his hand, as if the voice that just appeared was just an illusion. Lu Xuan didn't think twice and put away the sword-shaped token. The two did not stay for long and retreated from the black and white mountain together. Senior brother Yang, what exactly is this sword token given by senior brother Jen? It seems to be of great value. Halfway through, Lu Xuan asked the middle-aged scholar. After junior brother Lu was promoted to the foundation building stage, he must have learned that our sect has several blessed places, right? Seeing Lu Xuan nod, he continued. A blessed land can also be said to be a secret place exclusive to the sect. Outsiders and even outer disciples cannot enter it. Only inner disciples who have made great contributions to the sect, or whose talents are unanimously recognized, are qualified to enter. It is full of various rare and high-grade spiritual medicines, spiritual minerals, etc., and even many strange treasures. A blessed land will only be opened at regular intervals, and the sword order in your hand is the key item to enter a blessed land. At the exchange meeting between fellow disciples, the value of a sword order is usually between 3,000 and 5,000 spirit stones, and it is often out of stock. Few fellow disciples are willing to sell sword orders. Lu Xuan nodded to show his understanding. He had a certain understanding of the value of the sword order in his hand. 3 to 5,000 spirit stones were already equivalent to a relatively ordinary 4th grade spirit seed, and this was the value of the key to enter the blessed land. A blessed land that attracted many fellow disciples and tried every means to enter must have even more rare treasures. Excuse me, senior brother Yang, how safe is it to enter the blessed land? Is there a possibility of serious injury or even death? He asked the middle-aged scholar the most critical question. Junior brother Lu, you are too cautious. If you don't want this sword order, how about giving me the 4,000 spirit stones? The middle-aged scholar shook his head slightly and asked tentatively. Seeing that Lu Xuan didn't have that idea, he continued. The sect's blessed land is not like those secret realms outside, where evil beasts are everywhere, and the cultivators are scheming against each other. The sect will organize the disciples who enter the blessed land and regularly clean up the unstable factors in the blessed land, so safety can be guaranteed to the greatest extent. When you encounter danger, there will be a giant uncle who is in charge of the blessed land to help. Anyway, I have not heard of any disciples being killed in the blessed land for decades. After I broke through the foundation building stage, Lu Xuan felt relieved after hearing this. He was fascinated by the blessed land belonging to the sect. After confirming that safety was guaranteed, he was even more eager to move. However, he learned from the middle-aged scholar that it would take some time before the next blessed land opened, so he was not in a hurry to make a decision. When the time came, he would choose whether to enter the blessed land or not. At least, the sword order in his hand could be directly exchanged for 3 to 5,000 spirit stones. This time, he was invited by the middle-aged scholar to help his true disciple Jepu solve the problem of breeding the ancient beast Yin Yang Kunfish. It was worth the trip to get it. The two people were on different mountains. After flying together for a while, they parted ways and flew to their respective caves. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197, Ghost Bead Flowing Light Talisman Array. As soon as Lu Xuan entered the mountain, a black shadow emerged silently from the woods and landed not far from him. Ah! The cloud-stepping lynx stared at Lu Xuan with a pair of emerald eyes, and his rough throat was slightly clamped, and he growled at Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan smiled and walked up to it. Seeing that the two tufts of grey-white hair on the tip of the lynx's ears were trembling slightly, he couldn't help but reach out, grab the hair, and twist his fingers in a circle. Free range is still different. The body lines are smoother and more energetic. Lu Xuan kept twisting his fingers in a circle and sighed. The cloud-stepping lynx shook its curly hair, glanced at Lu Xuan indifferently with its emerald eyes, and with a whoosh, it went into the woods. Passing by the nest woven by the grass puppet, Lu Xuan deliberately looked at the young wind falcon. A pair of broad light blue wings drooped down, and under the round belly, a corner of the fiery red eggshell of the Lihuojiana long egg was exposed. Chirp. The young wind falcon spread its light blue wings, and chirped at Lu Xuan, nodding its head at the Lihuojiana long egg. Is it about to hatch? Lu Xuan focused his mind on the wind falcon, sensing the information it revealed to him, and leaned over to observe the Lihuojiana long egg carefully. On the surface of the eggshell, the light red lines were much denser than when it was just hatched, and occasionally trembled slightly. When the spiritual sense explored it, it could detect that there was a strong vitality inside. It is rare for a wine-type demon bird in the second grade growth period to hatch a third grade Jialang. Lu Xuan needed the soft belly of the young wind falcon, signaling it to keep working hard. Back in the courtyard, Lu Xuan took a short rest and then came to the spiritual field. The newly planted spiritual plants have taken root and sprouted one after another, and the third grade Yulin grass has grown silver white thin leaves, and the surface of the leaves seems to be flowing with moonlight. Under the guidance of Lu Xuan's wood growing technique, the trees nearby built a natural roof. The layers of leaves block the sunlight well, preventing Yulin grass from being burned by the sunlight. The second grade Nichian grass has grown dense and slender young leaves, which are swaying in the breeze like dancing fairies. On the top of the mountain, 5 Rixiang fruits have also sprouted and are bathing in the sunlight. The plants are golden and dazzling, shining, and dazzling. The spiritual plants planted before are growing well. In the remote corner, where the fairy peach is located, a faint pink mist has appeared at some point. The pink and white trunk has grown a lot taller, and there are a few small flower buds among the pink leaves. The small flower buds are looming in the faint pink mist, which has a different kind of charm. Lu Xuan realized that under the influence of the fairy peach, all kinds of desires in his heart surged out. He hurriedly cast a purification spell on himself, and a clear spiritual light flashed, and his mind suddenly became much clearer. The fairy peach in front of him returned to its normal appearance. He cast basic spells such as the spirit rain spell and the wood growth spell, to ensure the basic growth needs of the fairy peach. Then, he came to the magma river formed by the ground fire. Due to its high grade, the 4th grade ground fire heart lotus is still in the state of a spirit seed. The fingertip-sized fiery red lotus seeds floated and sank in the hot magma, allowing the surging magma to wash and wash. Inside the spirit seed, a delicate and small virtual fire lotus was slowly rotating, as if it would break out of the seed at any time. The growth momentum of other spiritual plants was very good, including the 3rd grade sword raising gourd, jade scale fruit, dragon vine, 2nd grade sword grass, flame fruit, ice radish fruit, etc. The 2 sword grasses have begun to enter the mature stage, like 2 sharp swords, pointing directly to the sky. Lu Xuan inspected and met the growth needs of all spiritual plants, then returned to the yard. Time passed quietly, and half a month had passed before he knew it. During this half month, Lu Xuan basically stayed in the courtyard, cultivating spiritual plants and raising spiritual beasts. The rest of his time was spent practicing the Grade 5 element gong and 4 seasoned sword art. During this period, he also took a bath in the blood essence given by many dragons in Qianlong Lake to temper his body and practice the top grade body refining technique Taixuhua Longpian. Occasionally, he would go around and meet several inner disciples nearby who were in the early stage of foundation building like him. On this day, he inspected the spiritual field as usual. Hey, a 2nd grade streamer wood is fully mature. With his mind focused, the faint progress bar under the streamer wood was completely full. Lu Xuan pulled out the red flame sword from the Yangtze sword sheath and carefully cut off the mature streamer wood at the root. There are countless mysterious and natural lines on the trunk, and the lines inside are constantly flowing. It looks messy, but when you unravel it, it points directly to the mystery of the runes. Superior quality. Lu Xuan muttered to himself, and then a thought flashed through his mind. Liaguang wood, a second-grade spiritual plant. The bark and leaves contain natural patterns, which can be used to refine most common talismans. Where the liaguang wood was cut, a white ball of light was flickering slightly, attracting Lu Xuan to pick it up. Lu Xuan reached out and gently touched the surface of the light ball. Suddenly, the light ball turned into countless light points, transformed into many virtual talismans, and poured into his body from all directions. A thought flashed through his mind. Harvest a second-grade liaguang wood, obtain the third-grade formation liaguang talisman array. The moment the thought disappeared, dozens of talismans appeared around him, flying and spinning around him. There seemed to be a faint spiritual line between each talisman, echoing each other, and forming a whole. Lu Xuan's mind was focused on the talismans, and then he learned detailed information about many talismans. The flowing light talisman array, a third-grade array, is composed of many second-grade flowing light talismans, and is both offensive and defensive. The third-grade array, the flowing light talisman array, is slightly different from the second-grade mist hidden mystery array and the fourth-grade thousand illusion cloud smoke array that I got before. There is no array plate, just a talisman array composed of dozens of talismans. But it happens to be suitable for the current mountain environment. Since Jianmen Town has been unattended for a long time, the 4th grade thousand illusion cloud smoke array has to be arranged there. The mountain is currently a 2nd grade mist hidden mystery array, with a limited protection range, and it is gradually becoming insufficient. Lu Xuan's mind moved, and the thick white fog that permeated the mountain gathered up, covering only the spiritual field area, where spiritual plants were planted. Under the control of his spiritual consciousness, dozens of talismans flew in all directions, and disappeared into the mountains and forests. Lines of virtual and real changes appeared rapidly, and disappeared in an instant. After harvesting a high-quality flowing light wood, Lu Xuan continued to inspect the spiritual field. When he arrived at the cave entrance where the black wind was howling, he unexpectedly discovered a fist-sized white light ball hanging under a yunhua tree. Hey, what's going on? I remember that yunhua is a spiritual plant of the year. Lu Xuan was puzzled, and gently touched the surface of the light ball. The light ball turned into countless tiny light points, and poured into his body. A black bead filled with yin energy appeared in his palm. Yin Hunsu, a 2nd grade treasure, contains extremely yin energy, which can nourish and strengthen the resentment of the soul. Right square bracket. Chapter 198, Advanced version of Sword Grass. The 2nd grade yin soul orb can nourish and strengthen the resentment of the yin soul, which is pretty good. Lu Xuan sighed as he looked at the black bead filled with yin qi in his hand. However, yunhua is a year-class spiritual plant. In theory, it can continue to grow. It is just limited by factors such as species and cultivation environment, and cannot achieve immortality. The 2nd grade yunhua should be able to grow to more than 100 years, but as for 1,000 years, it is as difficult as ascending to heaven. I remember that it has been about 2 years since I planted this yunhua. 2 years is about the normal maturity time of a 2nd grade spiritual plant. Does it mean that, as long as the spiritual plant classified as a year grows to a certain stage, there will be a light ball reward? Perhaps when the yunhua grows to 7 or 8 years, or even 10 years, there will be another light ball reward. Lu Xuan guessed in his heart, and then shifted his attention to the 2nd grade yin soul orb in front of him. He took out the resentful soul bell bought from Wanbao Tower from the storage bag, and his spiritual consciousness controlled the several resentful souls hidden in the inner wall of the bell to fly out, and enter the yin soul orb. Several pale figures suddenly appeared on the surface of the black bead, lying closely together, with blurred facial features and vaguely enjoyable expressions. Yes, the resentment of the ghosts and the resentful soul bell can be nourished a little more in the ghost bead. Next time I go to Jianmen Town, I will let those 5 ghost-faced stone mushrooms have a feast. Lu Xuan looked at the resentment in the ghost bead, and a kind smile appeared on his face. I will let you eat and drink enough first, and then send you on your way. I'm so kind. While he was sighing, he noticed that a strange bird had entered the range of the mountain. The figure suddenly turned into a wisp of cloud and smoke and floated to the foot of the mountain in an instant. The strange bird seemed to be a puppet beast with a pair of wood in its eye sockets, turning slightly sluggishly, and the feathers on its wings seemed to be made of many small sword blades, which looked extremely sharp. The wooden eyes noticed Lu Xuan's presence, and the puppet strange bird opened its beak, and a clear voice came out. "Junior brother Lu, I'm Shenyi. I left you 2 sword grass spirit seeds in Sinner Hall. I wonder if you still have some impression of them. I learned from Xia Chen in Sinner Hall that you have been promoted to the foundation building stage and become an inner disciple of the sect. Congratulations on your success. In addition, my previous promise to you is still valid. As long as you can cultivate those 2 sword grasses, I will introduce you to the sword hall to join the ranks of cultivating and improving sword grass. If you are interested, you can follow my puppet bird to the sword hall to take a look." Shen Yi's voice disappeared immediately, and the puppet bird closed its beak and stared at Lu Xuan with a pair of wooden eyes. Sword hall, cultivate and improve sword grass. Lu Xuan had already roughly understood the importance of sword grass to the Xianjian sect. When he was in Sinner Hall, he tried to exchange sword seals for sword grass spirit seeds, but because of his status as an outer disciple, he was not qualified to plant sword grass. Previously, when he was in Linyang Market, he accidentally cultivated the sword grass, and the rare Zunli sword pills bloomed in the light ball left behind. Therefore, he had a great interest in the sword grass. Lu Xuan did not hesitate at all, and signaled the puppet bird to lead the way to the location of the sword hall mentioned by Shen Yi. More than a moment later, he came to a large formation. The formation covered a huge space, and countless sword ki on the surface swam freely like fish. Outside the formation, a gentle monk was waiting for Lu Xuan. The monk carried a dark sword box on his back, and stood there like a long sword with restrained sword intent. "Brother Shen." Lu Xuan hurried forward and bowed. The monk in front of him was Shen Yi, the master of Sinner Hall, who had met him once before, and had the cultivation level of the late foundation building stage. "Brother Lu, there is no need to be so polite." Shen Yi put away the puppet bird, and said with a gentle smile, "Brother, come to the sword hall. I think you are very interested in the sword grass. I will take you to visit it." Shen Yi turned around, and waved his hand. An invisible sword blade hit the surface of the formation, revealing a gap that 2 people could pass through. Lu Xuan hurriedly followed the gentle monk. A thin sword light passed by his cheek, as if as long as he made any unusual movements, the sword light would turn into infinite sword energy and cover him. After entering the formation, what came into view was a huge peak that soared into the sky. Flying swords of various sizes and shapes shuttled freely in the clouds. Sword energy was radiating from all over the mountain, and the sound of swords rang from time to time. The monks who occasionally passed by, each of them contained terrifying sword intent, which made Lu Xuan a little surprised. "Brother Lu, I didn't expect you to give me such a big surprise. If I hadn't heard Xia Chen mention it occasionally, I wouldn't have known that you had been promoted to the foundation building realm." Just as Lu Xuan was observing, Shen Yi, who was as gentle as jade, smiled and said, after he gifted Lu Xuan 2 sword grass spirit seeds, he really didn't expect Lu Xuan to be able to break through to the foundation building stage in such a short time. At that time, based on his understanding of Lu Xuan's aptitude was ordinary. If he wanted to break through to the foundation building stage normally, it would take more than 10 years, and it might not succeed. Therefore, when he saw Lu Xuan in the key training stage cultivate a high quality sword grass, he cherished his talent and privately gifted him 2 sword grass spirit seeds. He also promised Lu Xuan that, as long as he succeeded in cultivating it again, he would make an exception, and recommend him as an inner disciple, and introduce him into the ranks of improved sword grass. Unexpectedly, there was still some time before the sword grass matured, and Lu Xuan actually became a foundation building cultivator without making any noise. Although he was surprised, he was still happy to see it happen. It would be better if Lu Xuan broke through to the foundation building stage. At least he could cultivate sword grass legitimately. Brother Lu, you have exchanged so many spiritual plants in the Sinner Hall, so you must have known the special nature of the sword grass. Sword grass is a major foundation of the sect. Every sword grass is a natural sword weapon. Even if it is just an ordinary sword grass, it is also a good treasure for the cultivators in the key training realm of the sect. Not to mention, after countless generations of careful cultivation and improvement by cultivators, swordgrass has evolved many changes, and even special swordgrass varieties of the 4th or 5th grade can be cultivated. Therefore, even if you have many sword seals, without the status of an inner disciple, you are not qualified to plant swordgrass, let alone master the method of refining the spirit seeds of swordgrass. Shenyi introduced the situation of swordgrass to Lu Xuan in detail. 5th grade. I didn't expect that there are so many mysteries hidden in the swordgrass. Lu Xuan sighed secretly, believing what Shenyi said about 8 or 9 points. He had seen a variant of swordgrass in the secret realm, the sword peacock, which made him, a small casual cultivator of key training at that time, dazzled and fascinated, and he still couldn't forget it until now. Swordgrass will gradually undergo different changes under different spiritual environments, different cultivation methods, and the nourishment of different sword energy and sword intent. The most important task of the sword hall is to understand and summarize the corresponding rules, so that advanced versions of swordgrass can be obtained in batches. Shenyi said solemnly. Chapter 199. For the sake of the sect, a little sacrifice is nothing. For example, if the swordgrass is planted in the rich aura environment of the fire spirit, and then nourished and cultivated with the fierce sword spirit, the mature swordgrass may contain a burning effect. Continue experimenting from generation to generation, and in the long run, you will be able to use the sword the grass varieties have been improved. Shenyi calmed down and continued. However, the improvement of swordgrass is much more difficult than ordinary spiritual plants. After all, during the planting process, normal swordgrass needs sword energy to nourish and stimulate. If you try to improve the species, the sword energy, sword intent, etc. used for the experiment will probably harm the swordgrass plants. Lu Xuan nodded and asked with a puzzled expression. Senior brother Shen, according to what you said, the swordgrass I cultivated a long time ago has been nourished with the Zhengjin sword art of the gold system. Why does it not show abnormal conditions after it matures? There are many factors. First of all, junior brother Lu, you cultivated in Sangsifang City. The basic pure spiritual power cannot be guaranteed, let alone the special spiritual power environment. Secondly, junior brother, the sword energy you use to cultivate the sword grass is Zhengjin sword art. The level is 1st grade, so it is a bit reluctant to cultivate 2nd grade sword grass. In addition, if I guess correctly, junior brother Lu has not yet reached the current master level in the Zhengjin sword technique during the process of cultivating the sword grass. Affects the quality of the final sword grass. Of course, it is not completely ineffective. In my impression, the sword grass in the hands of the junior brother is sharper and stronger than the ordinary sword grass. It should be affected by the Zhengjin sword technique. Xuan nodded slightly to express his understanding. What Shenyi said was true. The Zhengjin sword art of his master level was indeed achieved after continuously absorbing experience packets. By the way, junior brother Lu, in addition to mastering the Zhengjin sword technique, have you also practiced other swordsmanship? After being promoted to the foundation building realm, I chose the 4-seasoned sword technique in the Sutra Pavilion. Lu Xuan answered truthfully. The 4-seasoned sword technique can be regarded as a superior swordsmanship. It has endless changes, and is difficult to guard against. Moreover, it is more suitable for cultivating sword grass. Monk Wenren affirmed. With junior brother Lu's talent in swordsmanship, I believe he will soon be able to practice that sword art to a higher level. By then, he will be able to cultivate sword grass with better quality. Shenyi looked at Lu Xuan expectantly. Thank you for your respect, senior brother. Junior brother, my swordsmanship talent is nothing in the sect. Lu Xuan forced a smile. Junior brother is too humble. It is not easy to cultivate a 1st grade sword art to the master level during the key training stage, no matter where you are. That's because I have absorbed enough experience packages. Lu Xuan couldn't argue. This was the first time someone had judged him as possessing excellent swordsmanship talent. A genius in kendo is a genius in kendo. Anyway, there are sword grass and sword goods planted now. The light group reward must be closely related to the sword. It should be able to give out some sword experience package, right? He felt a little uneasy. He asked for sword grass. I have to plant it with tears in my eyes. Fortunately, there is Unlucky Sword Pill in Danshan, a 3rd grade kendo treasure, which can completely cope with the current situation. While chatting with Lu Xuan, Shenyi introduced him to the layout, rules, etc. of the sword hall. Since you, junior brother, have broken through to the realm of foundation building, I will officially introduce you to the sword hall. Are you willing, junior brother Lu? After walking around, Shenyi asked Lu Xuan gently. I'm very happy. Being able to slowly gain access to the core secrets of Xianji insect and grow rare spiritual plants such as sword grass and sword peacock, Lu Xuan naturally had no objection and immediately nodded in agreement. Shenyi valued Lu Xuan very much and accompanied him personally, handling all the procedures for him as quickly as possible. Welcome junior brother Lu to join the sword hall. The sword hall has a transcendent status and is personally run by 2 Denji elders. Although I have the position of the master of the Sinner Hall, I also hold the responsibility of the deputy master of the sword hall. Lu, if you need me in the future junior brother, you can contact me. Thank you, senior brother Shen. Lu Xuan thanked him quickly and felt a little more favorable towards Shenyi. Shenyi was in charge of the spiritual seeds and condensation methods of the Sinner Hall, held an important position in the sword hall, the center of the sect, and was in the late stage of foundation building. Shenyi's status in his heart rose sharply, second only to the little Luan bird and the little white jade ape. Junior brother Lu, these are 10 sword grass spiritual seeds. This is the number of spiritual seeds that every sect member who has just joined the sword hall can obtain for the first time. You can cultivate them in the sword hall, or you can plant them in your own home. In the spiritual field, cultivate it and hand it over to the sword hall when it is mature. Of course, the sword hall will not let you work in vain and will pay you a certain sword seal as a reward. According to the quantity, quality, and improvement effect of the sword grass you turn in when it matures, the sword hall will decide the number of spiritual seeds you can obtain next time and whether to teach you how to cultivate higher grade sword grass. Cultivation of 10 sword grasses at one time may affect your normal practice, junior brother Lu. Thank you for your hard work, junior brother. 10 sword-like grey-black seeds floated in front of Lu Xuan. What? Lu Xuan was stunned for a moment, unable to react. Spend the sword seal to ask me to cultivate sword grass so that I can get the light group reward. Where can I find such a good thing? He took the 10 sword grass spiritual seeds with a solemn expression, word by word, full of affection said. For the sake of the sect, this little sacrifice is nothing. When Shenyi heard this, he couldn't help but feel a sense of respect in his heart and felt that Lu Xuan in front of him looked particularly pleasing to the eye. He is somewhat interested in growing sword grass, but it is absolutely impossible for him to sacrifice his training time to cultivate spiritual plants. Therefore, I admire Lu Xuan's choice. Lu Xuan walked around the sword hall and got 10 sword grass spiritual seeds. Shenyi personally sent him out of the sword hall formation and watched him disappear into the sky on the spiritual crane. Returning to the foot of the mountain, with a thought in his mind, tiny threads appeared and disappeared. Lu Xuan opened the streamer array and entered the mountain. After a few breaths, he returned to the courtyard. He got 10 sword grass spiritual seeds for free, which made him feel extremely happy, and his pace became much more relaxed when he walked. Lu Xuan entered the room, took out 10 sword grass spiritual seeds, and placed them on the table. I didn't expect that one day I would be able to get rich rewards for planting spiritual plants. Although the sword grass after planting has to be returned to the sword hall, at least, the light group that appears during the cultivation process belongs to you. Based on his experience in cultivating so many spiritual plants, the rewards from the light group are usually higher than the value of the spiritual plants themselves. We must perform well and strive to obtain more higher grade sword grass spiritual seeds. Lu Xuan secretly made up his mind. During the planting process, you can try to use different sword energy to nourish and stimulate the sword grass and try to cultivate variant sword grass. Compared with other sword hall sects, I have a natural advantage. With my understanding of the real-time status of the sword grass, it can stimulate the plants without causing damage to the spiritual plants. This ensures that all the sword grasses are fully mature, and fine adjustments can be made continuously during the planting process to increase the probability of the sword grasses mutating. The only problem at the moment is my understanding of the four-seasoned sword art is not deep enough. Lu Xuan thought to himself, and suddenly, a light flashed in his mind. Chapter 200, Small but Cute. Got it. My understanding of the four-seasoned sword art is not deep and thorough enough, but don't I have the best tool in my hand? The Xuan sword sheath can temper the sword energy and increase the power of the sword energy. Then I can inject the corresponding sword energy of the four-seasoned sword art into the sword sheath, and release it after a short period of warming and purification to nourish and stimulate the sword grass. In this way, the sword energy will be improved from poor to above average, but it will only take a little more time. However, preparation in advance can stagger the cultivation time. Lu Xuan looked at the ancient scabbard tightly wrapped around the red flame sword and thought excitedly. The four-seasoned sword art has 4 basic sword energies. He plans to nourish and cultivate 2 sword grasses for each sword energy according to the different nature of the sword energy. The spring rain sword energy is continuous and endless, suitable for planting next to a small lake full of spiritual energy. The summer sword energy is violent and manic, and the earth drawing technique can be used to build a suitable spiritual field on the magma river, generated by the branch veins of the earth fire, to plant to sword grass spirit seeds. As for the to sword key, autumn wind and winter snow, the former can be planted at the entrance of the Black Wind Cave, and the latter can be planted inside the Stone Cave. Under the nourishment and stimulation of different sword key, try to provide a similar spiritual environment for the sword grass spirit seeds, so that they complement each other and grow faster. In this way, there are only 2 left out of the 10 sword grass spirit seeds. Just as Lu Xuan was hesitating about what to do, his eyes swept across the Xuan sword sheath, and he suddenly had an idea. Why must it be stimulated and improved after planting? It is completely possible to induce it to mutate during the spirit seed stage. When we improved the firefly grass before, the probability of obtaining a mutated spirit plant after induction at the spirit seed stage was much higher than the stimulation and change at the spirit plant stage. Similarly, inducing at the sword grass spirit seed stage can probably increase the probability of sword grass mutation. The only price is the complete loss of the sword grass spirit seed. Unlike at the spirit plant stage, there is still room for compensation. As for how to induce and stimulate the spirit seed, the Xuan sword sheath in front of us is a ready-made tool. Put the sword grass spirit seed into the Xuan sword sheath. Will the scabbard also temper the spirit seed? The red flame sword has been inserted in the scabbard for a long time, and relevant sword intent remains inside the scabbard. After it is pulled out, this sword intent can be used to stimulate and induce the sword grass spirit seed. Lu Xuan did what he thought. He grabbed the ancient scabbard and pulled out the red flame sword with force. The fiery red sword body was pulled out bit by bit, and a faint flame mist seeped out from the crack between the sword body and the scabbard. When it was finally pulled out completely, there were still a few drops of fiery red spiritual liquid on the tip of the sword. The scabbard trembled slightly, trying to adapt to the state of the red flame sword. After it was pulled out, the red flame sword has been inserted in the scabbard for a while this time, and the marks left inside the scabbard are a bit heavy. Lu Xuan's spiritual consciousness probed into the inner wall of the scabbard, and felt that it was filled with rich fire spiritual energy, which was strong and hot. He pinched a slender sword-like spiritual seed, and inserted it into the crack of the Xuan scabbard. Perhaps because the red flame sword expanded the scabbard, the sword grass spiritual seed slid into the scabbard. The scabbard, which was not used to the insertion of the sword, wanted to refuse, but before it felt anything, the spiritual seed had already entered it. The Xuan scabbard, which was originally trembling slightly, calmed down instantly, stopped vertically in the low air and shook, as if provoking Lu Xuan. That's it? Small ones are cute too, Lu Xuan said perfunctorily, looking at the arrogant and simple scabbard in front of him, and decided to get a giant sword next time, to let this Xuan scabbard taste the feeling of cracking. His spiritual consciousness entered the scabbard, and sensed that the sword grass spirit seeds were floating quietly in it. There was a faint fire spirit lingering around, slowly nourishing the spirit seeds. For the 8 sword grass spirit seeds, we will be safe. Use the 4 basic sword techniques to stimulate and cultivate 2 of them each to ensure that the sword grass matures. At the same time, under the premise of obtaining the light ball, slowly stimulate the sword grass to mutate. For the remaining 2 spirit seeds, one is tempered with the sword intent left by the red flame sword in the Xuan scabbard, and the other is induced by the Zunli sword pill in the Danshan and the scabbard. This method has a higher possibility of mutation, but once it fails, it will become a waste seed and have to be abandoned. Lu Xuan thought secretly. In the next few days, he planted the 8 sword grass spirit seeds in various places on the mountain, and occasionally checked the spirit seeds that had been left in the scabbard. Of course, a lot of spiritual power is still spent every day, and time is spent on cultivating other spiritual plants. Life was simple and plentiful, but as long as he thought about the various rewards from the light ball after the spiritual plants matured, the busy Lu Xuan had some hope in his heart. On this day, when he was carefully cultivating the spiritual plants, a crisp chirping sound came from the foot of the mountain. The direction of the chirping sound was the grass nest built by the grass puppet for the young wind falcon to hatch eggs. Could it be that the Lihojiana eggs are about to hatch? This thought flashed through Lu Xuan's mind, and his figure passed through the forest like floating light. After a few moments, he came to the grass nest where the young wind falcon hatched eggs. When the wind falcon saw Lu Xuan appear, it quickly relaxed from its original state of tension. Under its round belly, the light red eggshell had more and more dense patterns, forming various fiery red patterns. A series of mosquito-like clicking sounds came one after another. Lu Xuan looked closely and saw cracks gradually spreading on the fine lines. The sound became louder and more frequent, and there were more and more cracks on the eggshell. Ang with the tender dragon roar, the eggshell shattered, leaving only fragments on the ground. A fiery red young dragon appeared. The young dragon was about 1.5 feet long, wet all over, with tiny red scales on the back and sides of its body. Its eyes were half open, observing the surroundings in a daze. After sensing that there was nothing unusual, the young dragon bit the fiery red eggshell fragments on the ground. Pieces of fragments were sent into its stomach. As more and more eggshell fragments were swallowed, the aura of the young dragon continued to rise. As the mucus on its body gradually evaporated, the majestic demeanor of the young dragon slowly emerged. Lu Xuan's mind was focused on the young dragon, and a thought flashed through his mind. Lihojiro, in its juvenile stage, feeds on monster meat and spiritual fruits, and has the potential to grow into a 3rd-grade dragon. The body is strong, and as its strength grows, it can automatically comprehend low-level fire magic. A 3rd-grade spiritual beast. This is the first time I've raised one of such a high grade. When I break through, I'll probably get more light balls. He started by raising a red-bearded carp without any grade, then a 1st-grade ironclaw crab, an alien cloud-stepping lynx, a 2nd-grade wind falcon, and then a 3rd-grade fire dragon. Although the grade of spiritual beasts doesn't improve as quickly as spiritual plants, it can barely keep up with Lu Xuan's progress. While he was thinking, the young dragon ate faster and faster, and soon swallowed all the fragments of the huge eggshell into its stomach. It let out a babyish cry and slowly crawled to the round belly of the young wind falcon next to it. With his eyes closed, he leaned on the soft belly with a satisfied look. This wind falcon is still a minor, but it is regarded as a mother by this young dragon. Lu Xuan couldn't help but sighed. Short ones are also cute. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.